Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to call this meeting to order. We'll start this meeting at 6:33. John Giardinelli, are you on the line?
I am, sir.
Well, thank you for doing this again. We would appreciate having you lead us in the invocation tonight.
My order.
Thank
Would you like
you.
me to go ahead and get started?
Pardon me?
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Do you want me to get started?
If you would, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. Dear Heavenly Father, we just come before you tonight. Our nation is in such deep trouble, Lord, with the residue of the last 3 months, and now, Lord, the divisions in our country and the hostilities in the streets of our great cities. Lord, we are grateful for living in a community like Canyon Lake, Lord, where the rule of law is still honored. Lord, we just ask that you give wisdom to these 5 good people, Lord, that you help them make the decisions that need to be made, and that we remain one city, and that we are so grateful for the freedoms that we do have, and Lord, having seen what's been going on, the freedoms that we could so easily lose. So we are just grateful for your presence, and we need you now more than ever. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, John.
My pleasure. You guys have a great evening, and thank you for your service. We really appreciate it here in this community.
Once again, thank you, John. Councilman Bonner, would you lead us in the flag salute?
Your heart and over your heart. Ready again.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Bonner?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo? Here. Councilmember Green? Councilmember Green? Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Mayor Aaron-Kranz?
Here.
Absent from tonight's meeting is Councilmember Green.
Thank you. Do we have anything to report out of the closed session, Mr. City Attorney?
Mr. Mayor, we have nothing to report out of closed session today.
Thank you. City Manager, are there any changes to the council agenda?
No, sir.
Then I would entertain a motion.
I move approval.
We have a motion by Councilmember Bonner,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Green. Everything tonight is going to be a roll call vote, I understand, so thank you. Please.
Councilmember Bonner?
Here. Oh, I'm sorry.
This is a roll call vote for the approval of the agenda.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Castillo? Aye. Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron-Kranz?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. I understand we have a little ceremonial matter tonight that our city clerk is going to do the presentation.
Yes, thank you. On behalf of city staff, we just want to wish a very happy birthday to Councilman Smith. I believe he has a birthday on Saturday, so we just have a card here and a little cake for him.
Thank you.
Anybody want to sing?
Unless it's you, Mr.
Oh,
Mayor.
thank you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. Darcy, are you on the line?
I am, Mayor. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. We're anxious to hear your report.
So first of all, I want to actually apologize to Councilmember Bonner. I didn't get your message from Sunday till today. So I apologize. I'm going to make sure you have my cell phone in case you need me or have a question. I rarely check my home phone, so I apologize, Councilman.
No problem. If you can call me back later on my cell, I appreciate it.
I will take care of that.
Thank you.
There's a couple of things that the Water District took action on, I think, that are really important. So when we passed our rate increase last year, it's a 2-year rate increase. So part of it went in last July, and the other half was scheduled to take effect July 1st. We decided as a board to defer that increase until January, given the economic status of the region and in deference of our ratepayers. We want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to catch their breath and get back on their feet. And alongside that, we also suspended shutoff until September 30th. So those families that may have normally been their services terminated or interrupted because of non-payment, those are suspended temporarily, and then our staff is actually helping people reach out sooner than later to set up some type of payment arrangement. And one of those issues is we realize that as time goes on, those bills get bigger. And we want to make sure that the bill isn't so big that it is an impossible task for people to get current. And the way the regulations work for us is we are limited in some respects of what we can do. So the sooner we can set up some type of payment arrangement, the better off everyone is, and we can eliminate any distress or interruption of service for as many customers that are currently experiencing a hardship. And that includes our rate adjustment program, where we have taken our income from non-rate paying sources, such as the rent of cell tower space on our tanks, and we use that to offset or provide some type of cushion for low-income families in order to meet their water bills. So given the current situation, more families may be eligible than originally thought. So again, I would encourage people to contact the water district if they're in that situation, because we want to make things work out for everyone. And we understand currently there's a lot of hardship, and we want to be respectful of that. Our lobby actually opened up for business again as of Monday, and within the first 2 days, we saw over 100 customers come through the lobby. So there is social distancing in place. We already had bulletproof glass. I unfortunately have to report that in our lobby, but that actually provides a barrier of safety in this particular viral environment. So people are welcome to come into our lobby during regular business hours. We also still have online paying, phone paying, and we also have something called AquaHawk that a lot of people may not be aware of, that actually you can register, and it gives you an up-to-date, it helps you manage your water budget. So it tells you where you are, how much water you're using, and alerts you if you should have a leak or some type of other instance that would be out of the realm of what you normally use before it gets to be a problem or before you have a surprise on your water bill. So I would encourage everyone, whether you're having a hardship or not, to at least explore using WaterHawk. It's a great water management tool for each resident. One of the other issues that I brought to you before with staff, and I've revisited a number of times, is the PFOA issue. And as you know, Canyon Lake tested above the state mandated levels, and as a result, we have not turned on our water treatment plant. So for the short term, recreation on Canyon Lake is probably improved because we're not drawing down the lake as a source of water. But to give you an idea of what that looks like financially, you're looking at between like $600 and $700 an acre foot for the water we're able to pull off of Canyon Lake, treat to drinking water standards, and deliver. And we're replacing that with $1,100 and $1,200 water. So it's almost double the price. So at some point, we're going to have to reevaluate what that looks like financially, and it will probably have an impact on rates in the long run. One of the things that I had asked staff to do is actually to not put a Band-Aid approach to dealing with this current constituent. Instead, they're doing a master plan for the Canyon Lake treatment plant, which means we're looking at all types of treatment that are available now, because innovation has changed over the years, how we can invest very strategically and make that plant maximize the investment, return not only great drinking water quality, improve taste and odor issues, deal with the 72 new constituents that the EPA has outlined, but make it cost effective. And so staff has let out an RFP. Kennedy Jenks was the winning engineering firm that bid on it. And they will be looking at the treatment plant as a whole and looking long-term what's the next best step. So that when we have a new constituent coming on, we're not going to have to scramble for additional treatment, but rather look at some advanced treatment models and processes that address a number of constituents and constituent families. So I know that's kind of technical, but I think it's really important to understand that we're going to take a step back and figure out how to best use that resource for the long run. Canyon Lake Water Treatment Plant is really an integral part of our system. When you think of if there were to be some type of service disruption at the 15 freeway, Canyon Lake Water Treatment Plant would be the sole source of water provider for Canyon Hills and Tuscany Hills. So it's not just Canyon Lake that it services, it's a wider region now that our region is growing, and so we have to be really smart about how we use that asset. As that relates to Canyon Lake Treatment Plant and PFOA or PFOS, we know where that came from. That contaminant into our lake, one of the few surface water reservoirs that have this constituent, came directly from March Air Force Base. March Air Force Base does not agree with us, however, and so we have to go through the process of validating where that constituent originated from and how it got into our lake, which means we actually have to follow the source or look at the entire watershed. So in addition to sampling that staff is working on now through the watershed, through the dry creek bed, which will have to happen when water is present in those areas, I've also asked staff to take samples of the lake bottom and look at what the history of PFOA, PFOS may be in a deeper sampling. The challenge with that is there is no generally laboratory accepted practice to identify PFOA or PFOS in a soil sample. So our staff has been tasked to work with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the State Water Resources Control Board, as well as the Santa Ana Regional Water Quality Control Board to determine what those best management practices are, so that when we do have samples and we can perhaps tell the story through history of the levels of strata in the sampling, that we were able to have a defensible plan. And what that means in the long term is there may be dollars available for dredging and cleaning up the lake, which has a benefit not only for drinking water quality, but also for recreation. So that's a longer term plan. I can't tell you it's going to happen overnight, but our plan really is to look at it as a holistic manner. Canyon Lake is one of our key assets, and we want to protect not only the integrity of the dam and the structure, but also the water quality. So when we have those protocols and we can implement them, I think it goes a long way for Canyon Lake residents, not only for the drinking water quality, but really looking at the ways we use the lake in a recreational format. That's all I have this evening. Oh wait, I apologize. I do have one other thing. As it gets warmer and people are irrigating their landscapes, I'm going to ask you to watch for runoff. Not just because it, quote unquote, might be a waste of water because that water runs right into the lake, but I have already seen postings of people disappointed in the amount of algae present in the lake. Overwatering landscape has a direct correlation to how much algae is present in the lake, because all that wonderful fertilizer you put on your grass and your flowers goes into the lake to feed algae. So when we can reduce runoff, our water quality improves in the lake automatically. And it's a really inexpensive fix. One, you're not using as much water, and two, you're improving the water quality of what's actually going into the lake. So people could just be mindful, check their sprinklers, and make sure that we're not overwatering. I know there's a little overspray. If you happen to be hand watering, that happens too. I'm looking at consistently having sprinklers or irrigation systems, maybe watering driveways or other concrete areas that directly run off into the storm drain and then into the lake. So, Mayor, that's all I have for this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions. I appreciate your time and attention, and hopefully I haven't taken too much of it.
Well, thank you very much, Darcy, for the update. Does the council have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thanks very much, Darcy. We hope we can see you in person next month. Okay.
I hope to be in person soon. You all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye.
Jerry Kong, is he on the line, or she? He. Jerry?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good, thank you. I understand you're going to give us a census update?
Yes, I have a short briefing for you.
You have what?
A short briefing for you?
Okay, well, we're willing to hear it.
Okay, wonderful. Mayor Aaron Krantz, City Manager Mann, council members, good evening. My name is Jerry Kong. I am your local partnership specialist with the United States Census Bureau. I live quite local in Justin, Wildomore. And if we could begin the slideshow, Anna. If we go to slide number 2. I just want to ensure all of your residents and the city council, of course, that your answers that you submit to the census are all protected by law, and that no information will be shared with any other agency or law enforcement. If we go to the next slide, the estimated undercount based on the 2010 census is 280,000 residents, and that means that for every resident that is not counted in the census, close to $2,000 is missed. And the ramifications, the consequences for the next 10 years is $560 million that California is entitled to that will be missed each year for the next 10 years. Next, I want to show you the operational timeline for the census, which was interrupted and delayed by the pandemic response, of course. Our original timeline was to end operations on July 31st. Currently, that schedule is extended until October 31st, so residents have until Halloween to fill out their census online. And if you look at the below timeline non-response follow-up, that's when census staff and enumerators will come into your neighborhoods, knocking on doors, asking for responses for those residents and households who have not responded to the census just yet. That is slated to begin August 11th. So if you haven't filled out your census by then, you should be expecting a census staff and enumerator to come out to your household, so be aware of that. I know how much we hate anyone coming to our neighborhoods, knocking on our doors for any reason. And if you wish to avoid, a federal official, a census employee knocking on your door, asking you these questions, please go ahead and fill out the census online or by phone. And if you haven't filled it out yet, you should have received a paper questionnaire. So you should be able to fill that out and submit that as well. The next slide shows the self-response rates for the city of Canyon Lake. So the United States currently, as of June 1st, is at a 60.5% response rate. California is doing a little bit better at 61.6%. You're doing better than Riverside County as a whole at 59.5%. I know that Anna asked me to give you comparisons for Lake Elsinore and Menifee. Those are the numbers. Lake Elsinore is at 61.8, Menifee is at 59.7, and Canyon Lake is at 64.9. If you go to the next slide, these are the census tracts that include partially or wholly Canyon Lake. And as a whole, Canyon Lake is doing really well, but you will notice there are problem census tracts, most of which probably aren't in majority Canyon Lake, but these are areas of concern that we would like to work with you, your council members, and Anna to boost these numbers in time for non-response follow-up. The next slide shows a weekly schedule of webinars for your residents who may have questions about the self-response. They're free to register for these webinars. These are available to the public, to anyone who wishes to learn more about the census. And the last slide is my contact information. Your residents should feel free to contact me by email or by phone with any questions or concerns that they may have. And I'm free to answer any questions that the council may have. I know that Anna wanted me to address one question that was outstanding, that was regarding zip codes and cities. Anna, if you don't mind putting up that PDF slide, and I could just read it aloud for your residents and your council members, I know that that would be really easy to do. Yeah, so the USPS city versus census geography, the United States Census Bureau relies on an accurate postal address to the U.S. Postal Service to deliver census correspondence to most households. A postal address typically is composed of a house number, street, city, state, and zip code. The mailing address for a resident is not used to assign housing units to the proper political jurisdiction or census geography. Instead, the Census Bureau uses the physical location of a housing unit to assign it to the proper geographic area. So what this means is you should feel very confident that even though I know that there are incidences where residents have filled in their census and they put in their zip code, it'll come up as Menifee. I just want to ensure all of your residents that they will be counted properly in their jurisdiction in which they reside. And if there are any questions, other questions that the council may have or if the staff may have, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, this is a Councilmember Monaghan. The problem we had in the past is if you didn't use the 5 digits plus the next 4, you could be identified as Canyon Lake, Quail Valley, or Sun City. Okay, and very few people use the last 4 digits to make 9 digits. Okay, and that's the problem we ran into in history.
So if you fill out your census using the invitation code that came in the mail through the postcards, that won't be a worry whatsoever. That invitation code is geotagged to your residence. That is tied to both your street address and your city. And so that shouldn't be a concern as it was in the past. So now that we've moved to online self-response as well, that is one less concern that your residents should have.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions from council? Well, thank you so much for the update. We certainly appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Of course, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I would like to comment, those screens are really nice. We can see from all angles now. Good job. Next is our public safety update, and the lieutenant's not here.
Hey, city council members, here's Lieutenant Sam Morvich. I'm actually here with the Lieutenant Donovan Brooks as well. I'll be turning it over to read this month's public safety statement.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and fellow council members. I looked over the stats for April and May for the city of Canyon Lake. Actually, just April. Everything looks consistent with what's been reported over the past couple months. There was a little spike in motor vehicle theft, but at the number of 3. It looks like one was a golf cart. And all of them have been, from what I can look at, all of the vehicles have been recovered. There were only a total of 7 reported Part 1 crimes for the month of April. None of them really stand out as anything other than people leaving their garage doors open and somebody coming in and taking a couple items out of the garage. It's a good reminder to, let people know that they should keep their residences secure, even being in a community like Canyon Lake. You never know who's coming in, and keep items out of their vehicles, especially when they're out shopping. That way, they're not an easy target. There were a total of 23 traffic citations issued for the month of April, a slight increase over the month of the previous 2 months. And there were 2 arrests. One was for battery and one was for public intoxication. Other than that, there's really no other crimes and nothing significant that happened in Canyon Lake recently. So I'll open it up for any questions that you have for myself or for Lieutenant Morovich.
Anyone?
I don't have a question, but this is Mayor Pro Tem Castillo, I just wanted to say thank you very much to the Riverside Sheriff. I know it's not been easy lately, and we are praying for you and bless you.
But we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. No other comments? Well, thank you for the report. It's nice to see that things are actually getting a little quieter, which is pretty amazing at this particular time. Excuse me. But thank you so much for your report.
Thank you.
Fire chief, you going to be calling in?
I don't believe so. Chief Barnett, are you on the line? I don't believe we have anybody from fire, but we do have stats. I bring copies for the council.
Yes, we do have statistics here. Does anybody have any questions on it? Perhaps give us a second to go through. Yes? No question? Councilman Bonner, any question? No, I guess we're all satisfied with the report then. We thank you for furnishing this to us. And I guess we'll move on to, I think it's probably going to be changed. The special court enforcement?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me. So we have seen our largest spike in numbers since I've been here on the federal land that we share a cooperative agreement enforcing. I reached out based on Ranger Purdy and our weekend crews that are out there to Riverside County Parks and Rec, and was hoping that maybe somebody could look into trying to establish an MOU with County Parks and Rec. I sent an email because everybody that we kick off just goes over there where neither agency can enforce. So these are their numbers for the weekend, because nobody likes getting cited on our side that we share with the Rangers. So for the first report, April 27th to May 3rd, they had 136 contacts and over 92 that evaded them. The second week, the 4th through the 10th, 167 contacts with 97 that were observed. And the 11th to the 17th, they had over 100 warnings issued and over 70 observed. These would be our numbers, but because we're out there together working cooperatively as a team, they have no choice. But when they scoop right in this one little section, we have pictures of all these people together hanging out in one little corner. So if we could get them on board with us, we could actually make the difference that we're trying to. But right now, we're missing a piece, a significant piece. And I know we brought it to the table before, but we never had the city manager that we have now, so maybe it's time to bring it again. They only issue warnings, and that's part of the problem. I know nobody's happy when they get a citation, but when they get a $100 citation, they're more hesitant to come back. And I don't know if it's just people are home, but it's been pretty crazy out there. shooting is coming back, because when you can't catch them and they're on UTVs and ATVs, and when they can just sit over on the other side and there's nothing we can do, there's no discouragement there.
Question, what's
Yes.
the attraction to this one little area that you're talking about?
They can ride wave runners and motorcycles and quads and hang out, violating the executive order where nobody else will let them.
Actually, they can't do it, they're in violation of what they're doing.
Yes, but they're in an area that has a lack of patrol or presence. And they're outside of our reaches and jurisdiction.
Well, I'm not so sure that our city manager can fix that, but he'll probably try. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please.
So how big is the area? I'm pretty familiar with it. So are we talking from, is it,
So there's Cavian Park. We go all the way up to Cavian Park, which is a wildlife preserve.
right?
The Cavian Park goes all the way around to the other side, and then we pick back up again with the federal land and within the city limits. So everything federal and within the city limits, we can keep that clear.
And everything else, and obviously these people are weekend warriors, so they're really aware of what they can and can't get away with, and it's continuing, and word of mouth, I'm sure, is spreading, and it's ongoing.
Bringing more, yeah.
So, for the sake of conversation, Mr. City Manager, any ideas?
Yeah, I think we need to reach out to the county
Okay.
and make sure they understand we expect cooperation.
Have we done this before? Have we reached out to the county? Have we reached out to anyone?
We've met with them before,
And what
and
was the outcome of that meeting?
the same as my email today, which is having an MOU between agencies will be up to our executive team, but I'll pass on your thoughts.
Seriously?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Well, let's get to work on that then. Wow, that's bad. Okay. So with that, are we documenting some of the things that we're seeing? Obviously, we can't, we can only do so much. We can take pictures, but we're documenting it, we're showing the time, we're showing, nothing's posted. Is there any signs? I know normally when the signs go, they get shot up by shotguns or they get ran over or whatnot, but is there any posting? Is there anything that has been done by the county's agency on this particular area? Or has there just been nothing done at all?
This year, there hasn't been physical efforts. In the past, they've put up branches, they've tried to make fencing out of logs and etc. This year, no effort. Well, I can't comment on that, I guess. I haven't seen or contacted or been in contact with the Riverside County Park Ranger. However, their numbers are showing that they're out there, that just both of our agencies are missing them.
Any bonfires?
Yes,
Shooting?
yes.
And we have not reached out to the county, Mr. City Manager, and let them know that we are entering fire hazard, and these, basically the bonfires that are taking place are uncontrollable, so therefore we need assistance, we need help. I think because we are approaching, summer season where it's going to become an issue. And if these folks know that they can get away with it, then it's going to continue to happen.
I have specifically been in contact with their supervisor. Apparently the Santa Ana riverbed during Labor Day is their bigger problem. That's where they direct all their resources, which is why I believe an MOU would be extremely helpful. It's not that we're asking to take on that duty, but if we can keep the area clear, there's no reason for them to cross over when they don't see us and cross back when they do.
It just sounds like the right hand needs to talk to the left hand a little bit.
Gina, didn't we at one time had an MOU between the county, the BLM, and the city?
To my understanding and research, we've never had an MOU with the county.
So just between the BLM and the city?
That's correct.
Well, Mr. City Manager, you said you needed something else to do. Is that right?
It has been a little slow lately, you know.
But other than that, we're under control. BLM, federal land, the rangers and fire prevention are out there.
Everything else going pretty smoothly though?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Everyone's being pretty responsive and tied down a little bit?
A much more supportive community.
Good.
Now that we're getting a little bit of, back to our regular scheduled daily lives. It's getting a lot better.
Good.
A lot of support.
Well, let's see if we can try to make, 2020? Can't believe it's almost over. See if we can make 2020 a year where we take a stab at this thing and see if we can get under control and hit a home run and make it right. I think that would be awesome. Especially, I think it'd make your life a lot easier too. So.
Yeah, definitely. It's just, we had a lot of late rain, so we have a lot more dry brush out there. And I could say that, well, as long as our area is good, we're good, but can't tell fire which way to go and which way to burn. So that's my concern.
No, and you bring up a good point. If CAL FIRE would have joined us this evening, they would have said that this is the time where they bring in another truck to our station because they oversee the fire hazards that we have throughout the summer, and it's going to happen. It happens every year. We try to prepare for it, and if we can help out in that particular area, it's going to make it only better for the community. So.
Well, that does explain to me the second truck I saw at Station 60 last week.
Yeah, they do that mid of May every year is when they get prepared and start relocating all their trucks around for fire season. So, thank you.
Any report?
Yes.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thanks so much, Gina. Now we're moving on to the public comments.
Any person wishing to address the city council on any matter within the jurisdiction of the city, whether or not it appears on this agenda, is asked to submit their comment electronically by sending an email to publiccomment@cityofcanyonlake.com. Please note that while I will be accepting email comments during this meeting, please note I will be accepting email comments in real time. If you're commenting on an item on the consent calendar or on items not on the agenda, I will read the emailed submissions into the record during the public comments portion of the agenda. If you're commenting on a business item or public hearing, I will read the emailed submissions into the record at the time that particular item is scheduled on the agenda. During this period of social distancing, electronically submitted comments should be no more than 250 words and include the person's name and agenda item number. I've received 3 comments so far. We have 2 of those comments are going to be for item number 4, so we'll hear those at that time. And so we have 1 comment now from Mr. Michael Zing. I did provide a copy to each council member and to the city manager. It's a little lengthy, so just bear with me. To whom it may concern, this is in regards to tenant property inspection changes and the requirements for business licenses on rental properties. We're asking for this order to be rescinded. We feel that this order not only hurts the landlord and tenants of Canyon Lake, but it also could have an immense impact on the property values of these homes and the surrounding neighborhoods. First and foremost, this is a violation of privacy for our tenants and ultimately brings the great concern that this is an open-ended violation of acceptable practice and ultimately is a direct invasion of home privacy. Tenant-occupied properties are part of Canyon Lake's makeup. The problem with the landlords paying a mortgage and other costs make it hard to make sense of rental ownership as it is. I have been told the story repeatedly about how there are a few bad apples in the mix, but I feel there are means of resolution that will not violate the civil liberties of the residents and tenants of Canyon Lake. For example, if illegal activity is reported, there are violations and steps in place to ensure the problem be handled, ultimately ending with termination of tenancy and/or revocation of property rights per POA rules and regulations. Due to the activities of the few, the masses should not be abused and targeted and blanketed in a generality that is being done. Once again, if these problems do exist, there are legal avenues to solve them. I am certain tenants are not the only people doing wrong or illegal activities, which brings me to ask my ultimate question of concern. How long before you're wanting to invade our homes? There is no need for further abuse Canyon Lake residents with more fees, rules, and inspections. If there is illegal activity going on in the premises, there are authorities to deal with that. If you can't see it, hear it, or smell it from the exterior of home or street, then it may not be of any business to anyone. I truly do not like to get involved in these matters, but these particular matter not only affects me and my tenants, but they greatly affect every member of our community and the quality of life by undermining our trust. In addition, the other landlords and tenants I have spoken to are greatly concerned with all of this. I believe this to be an invasion of privacy and a liability issue of health and safety. For you to force us into allowing unknown personnel into our homes. I'm asking again that you immediately rescind the following decisions. 1, charging any additional fee to landlords or tenants for rental properties. 2, invading the homes and privacy of tenants and rental units, violating privacy. 3, requiring a business license for each individual rental property. I'm a real estate broker and have an operational business license in Canyon Lake. I do not see why I would need additional business licenses for each rental unit and be required to incur a fee for each unit. I do not see it as fair to further abuse property owners with additional fees. A lot of us whom have been here for many years and have been an active part of the community and the huge reason for making Canyon Lake the great place that it is. Thank you for taking the time to read this and to fully digest the implications of these decisions on the great members of this community. Not only I, but we, the landlords and tenants, ask again, please rescind these decisions immediately regarding the changes of the rental property inspections, fees, and licensing. Sincerely, Michael Zing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That might have exceeded the amount of words, but thank you so much for reading it.
Thank you.
I don't know if you're on the line, Mr. Singh, but we're not allowed to comment on any of these items, but we have certainly taken them into submission. Thank you. Any other?
No other comments. The other 2 comments I have are for item 4. We'll hear them at that time.
Okay. Move on to the consent calendar then.
Thank you. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine matters, status reports, or documents covering previous city council action. The items listed on the consent calendar may be enacted in one motion. With the concurrence of the city council, a council member may request that an item be removed for further discussion. Before we have a motion and second, I'd like to make a correction to item number 3. If the council would like to turn to page 57, business item 7, I'd like to clarify that the motion was by Councilmember Bonner and not by Councilmember Green. So it would be a motion by Councilmember Bonner, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Castillo to rescind the current order as of May 6, 2020. I will make those changes to the minutes, and with that correction, staff recommends approval of all items.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Once again, I believe we have a roll call vote.
Thank you. And just to confirm, that is a motion to approve with the corrections, correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Motion to approve with the correction.
Thank you. Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaronkranz?
Aye.
Motion carried with Councilmember Green absent.
Thank you. Next order of business is public hearing. This is a resolution. I was told that I was supposed to look towards you when things need to be read.
Okay, very good. Have we opened the public hearing, or are we?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, if we could have the mayor open the public hearing and announce the time, please.
Okay, I had the gavel in the hand. We're gonna open up the public hearing at 7:18.
Thank you.
And this is a resolution that you're gonna read.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, item 4 is adoption of resolution 2020-22, establishing solid waste collection rates and EMS program fees for the 2020-2021 fiscal year and providing for collection thereof on the property tax roll. Included in this resolution is both the fees for solid waste collection and for the EMS program. I'm going to go through each of them separately here, and then afterwards staff would be happy to take any questions. Also, Mr. Alex Brekovich from CRNR is here in the room. Be happy to answer any questions you may have on the trash side of the equation here. So by way of background on the solid waste fees, as provided for in the franchise agreement and consistent with the city's obligation to protect for the public health and safety by ensuring that solid waste is regularly collected and processed in accordance with state law, the city regularly monitors the fees charged for solid waste collection services to ensure they are adequate to fund this necessary service. Significant regulatory and economic changes have led to increased costs of providing solid waste services to the city, including but not limited to regulatory compliance and monitoring of solid waste services, the loss of China as a market for recyclables, and increased to pass-through charges such as county landfill fees. In total, the increased fees will total $5.73 per month for residential standard service, going from $26.12 to $31.85 per month. Similarly, for commercial, industrial, and multifamily residential refuse service, the typical 3 cubic yard bin with pickups once per week will increase from $131.64 to $158.54 per month, an increase of $26.90. Public notice of this proposed rate increase was sent to all property owners and residents within the city's service area on April 20th, 2020. Attachment 2 is a copy of this notice. All documents related to this fee increase have been made available at the city clerk's office, and city staff have accommodated requests for information in light of the COVID-19 restrictions and social distancing. To date, the city has received no protests. Okay, now I'm going to go on to the background information on the EMS program. If you'll bear with me, we've had a lot of questions from the public the past few days on the EMS program, which, as you recall, was adopted by the City Council last November. As a reminder, that what we're discussing here today is the adoption of fees, not the program itself. However, that being said, I think there might be some value in going back and covering the history of this, how we got to where we are today, and why this program is so crucial for the city moving forward.
Mr. City Manager, may I interrupt for just one moment?
Yes, sir.
Are we taking these two items together or separately?
Yes, sir. They're all the same resolution.
Okay, well, we have two different times to announce and results.
No, sir. This is all in one resolution.
Well, that's not what my script says. Not right. Hey, whatever you want to do is fine with me.
Mayor, we do have another public hearing to follow related to a public use permit. There are 2 protest tallies that the city clerk will announce at the conclusion of the public hearing. But we do have one public hearing.
This is on, the second one is on the EMS?
No, we have one public hearing to establish fees. It's a single resolution. So we can certainly walk us all through it though, but I think it'd probably be best to finish the presentation on the fees and how the amounts were calculated, and then to proceed through the end of the public hearing.
Okay, well, the information that I have here says that the tabulation of the protest will be done, but the city clerk will release the results, and then we're going to move on to the EMS program. And
And we are going to tally the protests for both.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to be sure that I'm doing this correctly.
You're doing great so far.
So far, okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Quite all right, thank you, sir. Well, as we all know, the city provides fire and emergency medical services, or EMS, through a contract with the county of Riverside. The county, in turn, has a contract with CAL FIRE to serve as the county's fire department. So in essence, the city contracts with the county, which provides CAL FIRE personnel to perform fire and EMS functions in the city of Canyon Lake. I want to clarify that we are not talking about ambulance service here. That is another service entirely. Ambulance service in Canyon Lake is provided by AMR through a contract between AMR and the county of Riverside. AMR's role is to provide medical transportation. AMR is not designated as a first responder in Riverside County. Emergency medical services are provided by the fire department, and then AMR will transport to the hospital if necessary. AMR bills separately for their services, and again, this has nothing to do with the city. What we are talking about today are the emergency medical services provided by the fire department, which the city pays for through our contract with the county/CAL FIRE. The arrangement by which the city contracts with the county for fire and EMS worked well for the city for many years. The primary funding source for public safety services is property tax revenue. In fact, the city receives revenue from what is known as the fire structure fee, which is really a portion of property tax revenue that the county collects and sends to the city for fire suppression efforts. This amounts to just over $1 million per year to the city. Next fiscal year, it's projected at about $1.1 million. And for many years, this was sufficient to cover the city's costs of providing fire and EMS. However, over the years, the county began charging the city more and more for fire and EMS. Eventually, the costs handed down by the county far exceeded the revenue the city was receiving for providing the service, and the city's budget was thrown into a structural deficit. The city looked for ways to cut costs, but found there were very few options. In 2014, Canyon Lake voters approved the establishment of a utility users tax. The UUT is a 3.95% tax on utility bills. The UT has been a tremendous help and was renewed by voters in 2018, but the rate remained at 3.95%. The UT, which initially generated about $800,000 per year in revenue, today brings in about $1 million a year, although in recent years, UUT revenue has begun to decline as more and more residents are installing solar panels, cutting the cord on cable TV, and employing water conservation techniques. Despite the revenue brought in by the UUT, public safety costs have continued to rise steeply over the years. The straw that broke the camel's back came in 2012 when the county established as a county-wide standard a minimum staffing level of at least 3 firefighters on every engine. This requirement alone increased the city's costs by over $700,000 a year. Now, the city fought the county. The city objected to the increased staffing, which it did not see as necessary and simply could not afford. The city, feeling backed into a corner, stopped paying the county's invoices. Lawsuits were filed in both directions, and Fire Station 60 was ultimately closed from July 2015 to July 2017. Eventually, facing tremendous public pressure, the city relented and agreed to reopen the station under an agreement with the county that would allow Station 60 to operate with 2 firefighters for a period of 1 year, and then adjust up to the countywide standard of 3 firefighters on the engine. So in July of 2018, the city's budget began feeling the full brunt of county-imposed budget and staffing increases. And since that time, costs have only continued to rise. Since the year the UT was adopted, the costs of providing fire and emergency medical services have increased 79%. In fiscal year 2014-2015, the budgeted amount for these services was $1,263,000. This fiscal year, that has gone up to $2,259,000. That's an increase of $996,000. And keep in mind, those costs are for manning the same single engine at the same single fire station. And that's just for fire. The amount the county charges the city for the services of the Sheriff's Department have increased by more than 41% over the past 6 years. We're paying over $500,000 a year more today than we were 6 years ago for the same level of service with the Sheriff's Department. Now, the city runs a lean operation. Our entire general fund budget this year is just $5.8 million. 4.2 million of that, and rising, is for public safety. So the city spends just $1.6 million on everything it does other than public safety. Public safety costs are out of control, and they are out of our control, which is why the city has been evaluating options for alternative ways of providing public safety services. In the meantime, we must be able to continue providing quality emergency services. And that's where the EMS subscription program comes in. When a city incorporates, there are certain services the new city legally must provide for its residents. Police, fire, building and safety, land use planning, etc. Interestingly, emergency medical services are not on that list. Cities are not legally required to provide EMS. Now, most cities do, because it is a service residents expect, and because most cities take the health and safety of their residents very seriously. However, as in most areas, emergency medical services have become much more expensive in Riverside County. What's more, EMS calls now account for the vast majority of 911 calls to the fire department. In Canyon Lake, over 80% of the calls the fire department responds to are for EMS. Unfortunately, we simply cannot continue to provide this service without additional revenue. And so, like many other cities in California have done, in November of last year, the Canyon Lake City Council voted to establish an EMS subscription program. In order to continue providing adequate emergency medical services, it became necessary for the city to charge a per-call response fee when these services are requested. Now, the resolution before you, which establishes the response fee for emergency medical services provided by the fire department, also establishes a subscription fee as an option for Canyon Lake residents and businesses as a way to protect themselves from unexpected out-of-pocket expenses. By subscribing for a low monthly amount, everyone in the household can be covered without having to worry about receiving a bill should services be needed. To encourage participation and to make it as easy as possible for residents to participate, Canyon Lake residents will be automatically registered, and the subscription fee will be collected through property tax bills, just as our trash fees are. That being said, the subscription fee is completely voluntary. Anyone who does not wish to participate may opt out. However, if someone opts out but then ends up utilizing emergency medical services, they will receive an invoice in the amount of the established EMS response fee each time the fire department responds to them. So we strongly encourage everyone to participate in the program. Not only does it serve as an inexpensive insurance policy for the entire household, but it's a great way for everyone to do their part to preserve the city's ability to provide quality public safety services. Lastly, I want to emphasize that the city has gone out of its way to spread the word about this program. Ordinance 187 was properly noticed and appeared on the agendas of open city council meetings on September 26th, October 2nd, and November 6th of 2019. In addition, the ordinance was the subject of a front page Friday flyer article published on October 11th, 2019. After significant discussion, deliberation, and public feedback, the City Council unanimously adopted Ordinance 187 on November 6, 2019. While the ordinance officially became effective 30 days after its adoption, the fees associated with the program, i.e. the response fee and the subscription fee, have not yet been established and are before you this evening for adoption. Although a 45-day Proposition 18 notice is not legally required for these fees, City staff included the notice of this public hearing along with the solid waste fee notice sent out by CRNR on April 20th in order to maximize public awareness of the program. Additionally, the City Clerk published notice of the establishment of the fees in the newspaper twice in the month of May. On May 27th, the City held a virtual town hall meeting to discuss the EMS subscription program. The town hall meeting was advertised through the city's social media and in a full-color quarter-page ad in the Friday flyer, which appeared on May 22nd. Extensive information on the EMS subscription program was placed on the city's website several months ago, including a very thorough frequently asked questions document. City staff have completed a fee analysis to determine the actual cost of providing emergency medical services on a per-call basis, and are recommending that the City Council set the EMS response fee for full cost recovery at a rate of $1,483. Additionally, staff has calculated an EMS subscription fee at a monthly rate of $16 per residence or business that voluntarily participates. With that, staff recommends that the City Council adopt Resolution 2020-22, establishing solid waste collection rates and EMS program fees for the 2020-2021 fiscal year, and providing for collection thereof on the property tax roll. Staff is happy to answer any questions the council may have at this time.
Thank you for the presentation. Staff, have any questions?
I don't have a question, I do have a comment. I participated in quite a few online discussions regarding the EMS subscription plan. I think the majority of the questions were about whether or not this is for the ambulance or for fire, emergency medical response, and I'm grateful that you did address that particular issue, just so that there was no question about what exactly this covers. I have been requested by some of the residents to see if we could add a guest rider, maybe like $5 a month or something to cover grandkids or family members who come visit. But with that being said, I don't have any questions, and I'm excited about this program.
Thank you. Questions? Do we have any testimony by proponents? Opponents? I took it the wrong way around. I messed this whole thing up, may as well continue.
We do have 2 public comments against this item. I'll go ahead and read those now. The first comment is from Barry Talbot. This email says, I request that my following comments be read into the minutes of tonight's council meeting. The proposed EMS fees are simply the unbundling of our fire department services. Those fees have been disguised in all related city communications with our citizens. The fees are basically a new tax. No comparative reduction is made in the underlying fire department contract. The issue isn't just a new fee for emergency service that is added to our tax bill, but is a new use tax imposed on each of our citizens who may choose to opt out. Most cities include the cost of fire department emergency services in the overriding contract with the fire department. The cost is spread over all the citizens, not just on those who have an unfortunate emergency need. The proposed fee tax increases our overall cost and converts the cost of such emergency service into a use tax on individuals who decide to opt out, thus obligating an injured citizen to pay for each EMS event. This constitutes an unbundling of fire department services and may become a precursor for future fees. Perhaps the value of a citizen's home may become the foundation for further unbundling cost increases. All citizens are urged to vote no on this poorly conceived proposal. And that's signed Barry Talbot. Next, we have a comment from Mr. Richard Beck. It says, my name is Richard Beck. I live at 30385 Point Marina Drive, Canyon Lake. It is my opinion as an attorney who has successfully litigated cases against government entities and careful research on this issue that the use of a special assessment to fund emergency medical services constitutes a violation of Proposition 218. Emergency medical services are not eligible for assessment financing under Prop 218, but must be funded only through property taxes and other general and special taxes. On that basis, I object to the proposed EMS program fees to be paid through my property tax bill. I object to improper notice. The city states that it mailed notice on April 20th. The hearing was set for June 3rd. Less than 45 days notice required under Government Code Sections 53755 and 53756. I also object to the notice as mailed. The notice was 2 11 by 17 pieces of paper folded twice to a size of 5.5 by 8.5. The base of the document with the mailing address had a return address of CR&R Incorporated in Stanton, California. It could have been a piece of junk mail. As I threw it out, it flipped over in the waste can and I saw the back, important public hearing information. I was slightly curious what kind of public hearing CR&R was going to have. Imagine my shock to find buried inside that the City of Canyon Lake was giving notice for the EMS program. I have spoken to many Canyon Lakers who threw out the notice, or when they opened it, were not sure how they were to respond. Was the city being deceptive, fearing that residents would reject a tax? The closure of City Hall since March 2020 has prevented access to the documentation supporting the calculation of proposed fees. The closure has also prevented parcel owners from personally delivering protest and/or decline to participate notices as required under the notice that the City of Canyon Lake gave to parcel owners. I attempted to deliver my notice for my house and another property I own in Canyon Lake. At City Hall, an employee told me to take the notice to the administrative office. There, I was told by a management analyst that it had to be mailed. I then walked to the post office and mailed it, but you won't have it tonight. I request that the city cancel the hearing on the EMS program and start over following the law. Respectfully, Richard B. Beck.
Thank you.
Thank you, and those are the only two comments I have on this item.
Okay, well, with that, I'm going to close this public hearing at 7:39, and we'll have some discussion, if any, by the council. Oops, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, before the council has the discussion, I felt obligated to respond to at least one of the public comments that we just heard in opposition to this. I think the city manager actually did an amazing presentation. It was really comprehensive. And one of the things that he's talked about, and I think one of the commenters missed, is that this is not a special assessment. This is a fee for service, specifically emergency medical services. If you look in the California Constitution, and the Part where Prop 218 discusses fees, it talks about police, fire, ambulance, and library services. It does not include emergency medical services. Fees for emergency medical services are very common in California. Numerous local cities around us have them. They've been in California since the late 80s, early 90s, and they're constitutional. The city opted to do additional notice beyond what is necessary under the law. Under the law, all we had to do was put 2 notices in a newspaper 10 days before this hearing. But because CNR was already doing a public notice, we wanted to give as many of the residents of the city the opportunity to participate, to opt out, to protest the fee establishment if they wanted to. That's why it was included. So I think the characterization of this as the city attempting to be deceptive is just flat wrong. The city has done everything it can to let the residents of the city know what this program is and that these fees are being established so that if they want to opt out, they can. And it's my understanding that we received many opt-outs from people who didn't throw a piece of paper that said important public notice in the trash. So that's the only comment I wanted to make before the city council had this discussion.
I did have a question about something that was raised in terms of the 45 days. Is that correct? Were we not 45 days?
That is something that the city clerk calculated numerous times to make sure that she got the 45 days correct. And in fact, I watched her go through the calendar again this afternoon just to make sure it was 45 days.
Am I rescinding the time that I closed the meeting?
No, that was not testimony. That was discussion.
Is there any discussion now by the city council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Chris, I kind of want to, Mr. City Manager, I want to walk through the timeline a little bit, just so it's clear for the record. This has been discussed now since, how many months has it been? 6 months?
Well, Councilman, it first appeared on the City Council agenda in September of 2019. It had been discussed conceptually previous to that.
And if my memory serves me right, we had a few people that came out and spoke, and it was more of a question and answer, more so than this is just not right, this is wrong. It was more of, the information, the background, how it's going to be perceived, how it's going to help the city, how this impacts the resident. From that, we then moved forward and we partnered up with CRNR, but we also did a lot of steps along the way. We've done multiple Friday flyer ads. I think we've done a total of, my count is somewhere between 4 and 5, a couple of them being first page, full-blown ads to identify it. So with the ads that we did from the Friday flyer, was there, and this maybe is a question for Anna, was there any questions that came over the phone? Did anyone knock on the door? This is before COVID. We took these ads out before COVID-19 too. So did we have people that came to the door? Did anyone call on this? Was there a huge sense of riot, as one of the people might have made? Was there any concerns that you received from the office that we were unaware of because we weren't there?
I don't recall receiving very much communication from the residents after the Friday flyer notices.
I did get an email, I believe, from a resident whose name escapes me, a gentleman who wrote a letter saying, I'm in favor of this program.
Correct, yeah, we did receive a letter from Mr. Warren Kelsey expressing support. The city received a fair amount of comment throughout the past few months as we've gone through this process. Certainly in the last week, we've received quite a bit more. I think as details of the program have been discussed on social media, we received quite a few phone calls and emails and people knocking on the door. But there certainly has been every opportunity to have those discussions and for people to receive the information that they're looking for.
I know for me personally, I received a few phone calls. You mentioned Kelsey as one of them, and the conversation might have started as more of a question, not so much as a negative conversation, but more of, what's the needs and the wants. And at the end of at least my conversation with some of the people that I've had the privilege of talking with, it was a positive thing. So I want to condemn I want to congratulate and thank the city staff on all the hard work that they've done, to get this information out. And I think this council has done everything we can by allowing enough time for people to come forward and the masses to reject this program. We've been extremely open, not only through social media, but I have here 10 bullet points from tonight, moving back to when we officially started the idea and the concept of this program. Anything from town hall meetings, which, by the way, Mr. City Manager, you did a phenomenal job answering those tough questions that people had about the program, to create an entire website dedicated to the questions and concerns that this program has, that I thought was well written. I know the city attorney made good comments on it as well too. You can pretty much find any answer in that website. We then went on to do, from there we did multiple council meetings on this. We did full color ads like I had mentioned. So I believe we've covered our bases. And I think, that's what the most important thing to do when you're looking at a program like this, is to make sure you get as much information as you can out. And you try to answer all the questions, and I think we've done that. I know there's some concerns in regards to whether or not your insurance is going to cover this program or not. But again, our Mayor Pro Tem made a good point. This is the difference between what is a first responder and an ambulance. And I think that's upon the residents to look into that information, not on the city. We're trying to provide a service, trying to spread that cost across everyone. And again, this is a voluntary service. I think people need to understand that too. This is not forced upon you. This is a voluntary service. So at least my report back on this is I've had multiple conversations in this, and at first it was a question, but then it was very positive. And if I can check back with our staff and city manager, and if that's been the same thing that you've received at City Hall, then for me, I'm in full support of this program that we put in place. I think it's a good move for the city, and sitting on the Budget and Finance Committee, I know that this makes our city, this is a good thing for our city, and it moves us in the right direction. So that's all I'll have to say on it.
Well, thank you for that. I know we're going to get to a tabulation of protests here in just a moment, but I'm sorry that we're in a position that we even have to defend ourselves for lack of getting this out to the public, because we have just flooded the community with information. But people don't seem to pay a whole lot of attention to some of the things. At 4:58 this evening, I received an email from a citizen saying this is the first he's heard of this, and he would like to make a few comments. Well, I haven't responded at this time, not that I won't, but this is what happens around here. Most of the responses, I shouldn't say some of them, most of the responses that I heard were positive, and the information was given to them to where they understand it. I'm sorry if somebody didn't understand it, or if somebody threw it in the trash. Well, that happens. But I think we did our job, and I certainly I can't give away on that vote just yet, but I'm certainly very, very pleased with the whole presentation. Any other comments? No further comments? Well then, City Clerk, you're going to tabulate the protests for the solid waste collection rates and inform us if a majority exists.
We have not received any protests for the solid waste collection rates.
Okay. Then will you please tabulate the protests for the EMS program fees and inform us if a majority exists?
Thank you, Mayor. We've received 7 protests for the EMS program fees. I'm deeming the protests valid, but a majority does not exist, so we may proceed.
Okay. Next thing we need to do is have a little action by the City Council. And I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution number 2020-22.
I so move.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Castillo. We have a second.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron
Aye.
Motion carried to approve resolution number 2020-22 with Councilmember Green absent.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 5. This is another resolution and another public hearing. And do you want me to announce the time first?
Please.
Okay. I'm getting good at this now. 7:50.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask our city planner, Jim Morrissey, to give the staff presentation on this item. Jim, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. You're pretty loud.
Excellent. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Yes, this is a revision to a public use permit for the Canyon Lake Community Church located on Railroad Canyon Road, 30515, at the corner of Sorrel and Railroad Canyon Road. What the applicant proposes is to expand the daycare facility to allow up to 100 children there. The current permit, public use permit, permits up to 60. So it would be an increase of 40 children per day. One clarification on that, that doesn't necessarily mean it would be the same children each day. So as noted in the staff report, different children come in at different times, so it's a capacity during the day. That capacity is also regulated by the state, as mentioned in the staff report. So the current facility, which we permitted up to 60 children, is permitted by the state per their requirements for a maximum of 49. So once we, as the city, take action per the zoning requirements to permit the use and evaluate the potential effects of the use through the environmental action, then the state will be able to evaluate the actual operation, and that will be the applicant's responsibility. Before I say anything more, I also wanted to make you aware that Brittany Youngquist, who will run and has run, I say it that way simply because it's closed right now because of the pandemic, the daycare operation, she is on the call as well. So if you have specific questions, she would be able to respond to that. The daycare facility will operate in essentially the same manner that it has been operating. The hours of operation are changing a little in the morning. I think it's starting a half hour later. Previously it was 6 a.m. and now it's 6:30. The facilities will not change from the exterior. There are interior remodeling changes which are currently ongoing. A building permit has been issued. They are expanding 3 of their classrooms to have 1 large classroom. The children that
used to use that space will use another space. So there will be no exterior changes to any of the buildings. The project was noticed. People within, I should say, property owners within 300 feet were made aware of the proposal. It was advertised in the Friday flyer. We are recommending for the environmental action that it be exempt under section 15301 existing facilities, since there's really no change but a minor interior modifications. So the action before the council this evening is to open the public hearing and find that the proposed revision to the existing public use permit is exempt, as I mentioned, under the California Environmental Quality Act, and adopt the next resolution approving the revision to the existing public use permit to expand the existing daycare operation. The applicant indicated she did not want to make a presentation, but as I mentioned, is available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Council have any questions of staff? No question? Any testimony by proponents? Testimony by opponents?
None.
So then there are no responses necessary. With that, I'm going to close this public hearing at 7:55 and entertain any discussion by City Council. None? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-23.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you. We'll need a roll call vote, please.
Prior to the roll call vote, if I could, Mr. Mayor, if I could have an action on the environmental component of it first.
So Mayor, could we get a motion to approve the environmental determination recommended by staff with a second?
I'm sure we can. Can we have that motion, please?
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second.
Can we get a roll call vote on that separately, City Clerk?
Separate roll call vote.
Yes, this will be for the environmental action.
Yes, please.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron
Aye.
Motion carried to approve the environmental action with Councilmember Green absent.
Okay, and now we'll go back to the motion to approve the resolution.
I moved it already.
Okay, I think it's been noted that there's a motion and a second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Bonner and a second by Councilmember Smith for the approval of resolution number 2020-23. Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron
Aye.
Motion carried with Councilmember Green absent.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask Mr. Morrissey to give this presentation. Jim?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff is in the process of preparing documentation to file for what's called the Local Early Action Planning Grant, or LEAP grant. This is a program which allows jurisdictions based upon their size to obtain funds from the state for planning-related activities. It's operated, or I should say administered, through the State Department of Housing and Community Development. So the focus of the program is housing related. And with all the action we have done on the housing element as of late, unfortunately, we have a new round coming up. What we did before was catch up, and now we're going to enter, if you will, regular order with that. So staff at this time would like to file the application, focus on the housing element that will need to be updated. I noted in the staff report that we believe work would start early next year and conclude in the fall of 2021. Our intent is to try and utilize the same consultant who helped us through the current update that the council acted on about a month ago. And most of the funds at this time would be oriented towards that. If the council thought that there may be some planning related programs, we'd be happy to investigate those as well. We have not finalized the costs at this point. The urgency of having the resolution on the agenda is that we need to file the application prior to July 1st. And the application must include action by the council. So this is the last opportunity to have it before the council. But as I said, our intent at this time is to utilize it for the new housing element update. So staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution directing staff to prepare and file the appropriate documentation for the local early action planning grant or LEAP program. I'll be happy to respond to any questions. Oh, and before I forget, we've been before you a number of times talking about SB2 funds that we're going to be using in next several years. Those are kind of matching funds. We, the city, will be utilizing funding in addition to funding from the state. We've been informed as of last week that we have met the requirements, and they are currently going through their administrative process to fund the program for us. In the next month to 6 weeks, they will be sending us the agreement that staff can execute and pass along to the state so that it will be truly official at that time. But they've accepted our application and they're doing the agreement preparation at this time. So that concludes the staff report.
Thank you. Council have any questions? No. Questions? Any public comments on this item?
No comments.
No? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution number 2020-24.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Once again, this requires a roll call vote.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron
Aye.
Motion carried to approve resolution number 2020-24 with Councilmember Green absent.
Thank you. Next is item number 7.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, one more time this evening, I'd like to ask Mr. Morrissey to give the staff report on this item. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. This item relates to the adoption of a resolution stipulating the use of vehicle miles traveled as part of transportation analysis on projects that require environmental review. 99% of the so-called projects that we deal with here are not really subject to CEQA. New subdivisions, apartment buildings, amendments to specific plans, those types of things would be subject to the Environmental Quality Act and subject to what is on the agenda here. The reason that this item has come up is that state law adopted a number of years ago the requirement that jurisdictions adopt vehicle miles traveled as a mechanism to evaluate not only transportation but address greenhouse gases and air quality. The information in your packet has mostly to do with documentation provided by the Western Riverside Council of Governments, in which they will be undertaking modeling that will create a uniform basis upon which consultants and jurisdictions will prepare their documentation. The modeling will change over the years as jurisdictions take action to reduce their, if you will, greenhouse gas footprint. But initially, everybody will pretty much start off at the same level. There are 4 different options that WRCOG had presented to the jurisdictions, and I noted in the staff report that the sub-regional approach seemed to be the most appropriate type of option for Canyon Lake simply because of our size and location. The regional approach has been used with our multi-species habitat conservation plan. It's been utilized with the transportation uniform mitigation fee that you've had on your agenda recently. We think that it is valid as well. One of the items that I noted in the staff report and is in the resolution is not only the use of the sub-regional model, but also the use of service employees as a kind of a subset of that. And the exhibit that I had pulled out of the large report that is also attached in the agenda identifies Canyon Lake as having the second highest amount of vehicle trips in this part of the county. And utilizing that particular factor, I think, will be helpful in that it'll be a little easier to achieve a reduction since our number is currently so high. If we had a very low number, it might be very difficult in the future to demonstrate that vehicle miles traveled can be decreased. In the staff report, I've pulled out some of the mitigation measures that they've come up with at this time. And the reason those are listed is they have modeled those as well. So for example, if you undertake a particular action, it might decrease your vehicle miles traveled, say 0 to 4%. If you took another action, it'd be 5 to 7%. So that's the way of evaluating how you're doing, if you will, in reducing the vehicle miles traveled. So the element that we've typically used for transportation analysis, level of service, LOS, is still a component. It's still a valid mechanism, but the vehicle miles traveled is a required component and would be in all future traffic analyses. So the recommendation before the council is to adopt the next resolution number approving VMT, vehicle miles traveled thresholds for the California Environmental Quality Act related to transportation analysis. I'll be happy to try and answer any questions.
Mayor, I got a question. It's just a question. The lead agency is WRCOG, and my responsibility is RCTC. And you're talking about analyzing transportation impacts. I've never heard that come up, this concept come up by RCTC. Is there a reason for that? So why is WRCOG taking the action and not including the RCTC?
Well, I don't know that I can.
The WRCOG is acting as kind of a coordinator clearinghouse to create a mechanism that the different jurisdictions can use. And they're doing it at the, I'll use the term sub-regional level, so this portion of Riverside County. RCTC's involvement, I've not heard them involved in this particular aspect of it. They could have been. I think what happened is WRCOG was able to secure some funding to have the modeling done, so they kind of took the lead in working with the jurisdictions. But specifically why RCTC did not do it, I don't know.
Well, thank you for answering that for me, Jim. I believe that we've discussed this at SCAG on a few occasions as well. But why it hasn't been at your committee, I don't know, Randy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other council member questions?
Yes, ma'am. Would you mind if I ask Jim a question?
No, of course.
I think you addressed this, Jim, at the end of your comments but you're still planning on using LOS for other analyses on projects if necessary, just not exclusively for CEQA determinations? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. A lot of, and this is a broad issue, so a lot of jurisdictions in their general plans have level of service requirements as far as policies. And it's a useful measurement, and it does not eliminate that, that evaluation tool.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Any public comments?
We have no comments.
I don't know whether the rest of the council will receive this from the VIA. I have a letter here asking for a year's delay on this implementation. Anybody else receive this? It was addressed to mayor and city council members. I mean, you don't have to take time to read it. I think they're asking for a delay. The highlight of it seems to be that the new way of doing business and working from home is going to change the vehicle miles traveled considerably. Would impact that. I don't know if this is appropriate at this time.
Mayor, I would say it very well may change the analysis going forward. Unfortunately, state law and CEQA regulations require that the city adopt a VMT methodology, and the one being proposed by staff, I think, is the most advantageous to the city of Canyon Lake and least constrictive of future development.
And that's, I don't know, that's number 4.
That's number 4.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Well, then I'll entertain a motion.
I motion to adopt resolution 2020-25.
Here a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron
Aye.
Motion carried to approve resolution 2020-25 with Councilmember Green absent.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8. This is another resolution.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. For the past few months, the city and CR&R, who is our solid waste collector, have been in negotiations to amend our franchise agreement, which has been in place since 1992. I've mentioned this at a few council meetings in the past, and we finally have it here before you today. By way of background, on January 14th, 1992, the City of Canyon Lake entered into a franchise agreement with CR&R Incorporated for the provision of solid waste services. Since that time, the nature of solid waste services has changed dramatically, with significant regulatory changes from the state of California and economic changes related to recyclables. The original franchise agreement has been amended 5 times to account for these regulatory and economic changes. The city and CR&R have constant discussions related to the continuing provision of solid waste services to ensure that the city and CR&R remain in compliance with state regulations and to protect the public health and safety. When it became apparent that the city and CR&R would need to further amend the franchise agreement, it was determined that it would be beneficial to adopt an amended and restated agreement that incorporates all previous changes so that both parties could reference a single document going forward. In addition to significant cleanup of outdated language within the franchise agreement, the amended and restated agreement makes the following changes to bring the city and CR&R into compliance with industry best practices. First, CR&R will conduct twice per month street sweeping services along Railroad Canyon Road. Second, CR&R will dedicate the required amount of time necessary to ensure compliance with AB 939. Third, CR&R shall pay a franchise fee of 20% of gross revenues, less landfill fees, to the city. Fourth, the term of the amended and restated agreement shall be 10 years from approval, with evergreen language automatically extending the term for an additional 1 year, such that the unexpired term shall always be 10 years. Fifth, additional language clarifying the method of collection fees on the property tax roll. And sixth, addition of pandemic to the potential force majeure events. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt Resolution 2020-26.
Thank you for the presentation. Council have any questions? No questions? Any public comment?
Mr. Mayor, while we're waiting on public comment, I mostly just wanted to thank CRNR for putting in the effort to get this all into one document, so that when we're talking about the legal responsibilities between the city and CRNR, we don't have to reference 6 separate documents, which can get a little tiresome.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize, Mayor, we have no public comment.
Nothing from Alex? Thank you.
With that, I'll make the motion that we adopt resolution 2020-26.
We have a motion and a second. Once again, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron
Aye.
Motion carried to approve resolution number 2020-26 with Councilmember Green absent.
Thank you.
Go home to your family, Alex.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Thanks for coming,
Thank you,
Alex.
Alex. Appreciate you.
Anybody need a break yet? Moving on to item 9.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The city's current cooperative agreement with the County of Riverside for Fire Protection Services will expire on the 30th of this month. The proposed cooperative agreement would cover the 2020-2021 fiscal year beginning July 1st and ending June 30th, 2021. While we all remain very concerned at the alarming rate at which the costs for these contracts keep increasing, we need a little bit more time to continue evaluating all of our options. The ESCI study is moving along quite nicely. In fact, we have received the first draft of their report and are eager to dig into that. We're hopeful that we can bring something to the City Council on that in July. But in the meantime, we do need to re-up with the county for another 12-month period. There are 2 changes of significance to this proposed contract versus the contract that we are in currently. The first is, of course, the price. The price is $2,214,207, which is actually approximately $20,000 less than what we were told to budget for this year. I want to caution, though, that I don't believe that we will actually see a reduction in the price we pay. If you recall, last fiscal year, the actual expenses ended up coming in quite a bit lower than the budgeted amounts that were given to us by the county, to the tune of almost $500,000. So I think what we're seeing here is the county trying to be a little bit more precise with their budgeting. So they brought the estimate down, but as evidenced by our recent invoices, the amount we're actually paying has been increasing. So I think we'll just see that this estimate is much closer to what we will actually be paying. So don't get too excited about how this looks, that it looks like the price is coming down. In reality, I think we should expect that it is not. The other thing of significance here is that if you recall, in the current contract, the city has to give the county at least 9 months' notice if we want to make any changes to the contract or if we intend not to re-up next year. This new contract reduces that 9-month requirement to 7 months. Other than that, all the language is the same. So staff recommends approval of this contract.
Thank you. Questions from the, any public comments?
Yeah.
We have no public comments.
Okay.
In the finance committee today, our latest invoice from fire was $452,000. Is that, and for how long of a period was that for?
So we're invoiced quarterly. And the invoices fluctuate drastically.
Right, because we've seen 500,000 and 600,000.
This last invoice was almost, just a hair under $500,000, $490-something thousand.
For 4 months?
For 3 months.
For 3 months,
Yeah,
sorry.
for 3 months. The 2 invoices before that were a little over $500,000 and a little over $600,000. So it's for a city the size of Canyon Lake with 1 fire station and 1 fire engine, it's a steep bill.
With $1 a fire station, right?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please.
Mr. City Attorney, this question is directed to you in regards to business item number 9. If tonight we do not accept the agreement, what happens?
Well, I anticipate a repeat of previous history with the county, which is where we will enter into a period where we no longer have an active agreement with the county. There will likely be a period where they will still continue to man the station, but at some point they'll simply close down the station and walk away. And we will no longer be providing fire service to the residents of the city of Canyon.
Thank you.
But there's a period of time, isn't there, where it's done under an emergency agreement?
That would be up to the county whether they'd be willing to entertain that. They have in the past entertained that. We've also in the past entered into agreements with our neighboring jurisdictions to provide fire service. But this all comes back to the city's obligation to provide fire service to its residents.
When does the agreement expire? When does this have to be?
I believe the agreement expires, the current agreement that we're under expires on June 30th. The current contract.
The current contract. Okay. No further questions.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Once again, yes, we need a motion.
A motion to approve the contract.
Motion to approve the cooperative agreement.
If I may,
By saying-
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, the requested motion is that the city council authorize the city manager to enter into a 1-year cooperative agreement for fire protection.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
We say,
We have a motion and a second, and a roll call vote.
Councilmember Bonner?
aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron
Aye.
Motion carried to approve the cooperative agreement with the County of Riverside for fire protection services with Councilmember Green absent.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 10. We have an ordinance that we're going to. This one should be easy.
Well, we'll see. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city attorney and I continually look at the city's municipal code to determine which provisions should be updated in keeping with best practices for cities. One that has been discussed a lot over the past few months is the term special enforcement. The city has a department that in most other jurisdictions would be referred to as code enforcement. In Canyon Lake, it has been special enforcement department, and there's a history there and a reason for that, but it's confusing in that special enforcement is not a term that most jurisdictions use. It's not something that appears in the penal code, and so we're recommending that we change that designation to code enforcement department. This came up at this time as we were looking at updating our salary and wage schedule, which is a little later on your agenda here. We thought as we were kind of redefining positions, it would be a good time to make this change. So with that, the staff recommends that the City Council approve introduction and first reading of Ordinance 198, an ordinance of the City Council, City of Canyon Lake, California, changing the name of Special Enforcement Department to Code Enforcement Department, updating references throughout the Canyon Lake Municipal Code, and authorizing the city manager to make changes to all city documents necessary to reflect the name change.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
We do not.
Thank you. Council have any questions? Then I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second to this is to adopt resolution number 2020-27.
I apologize. This is going to be for the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 198. Councilmember Bonner?
Here. Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Mayor Aaron Kranz.
Aye.
Motion carried to approve the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 198, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Canyon Lake, California, changing the name of Special Enforcement Department to Code Enforcement Department, updating references throughout the Canyon Lake Municipal Code, and authorizing the city manager to make changes to all city documents necessary to reflect the name change.
Thank you. Moving on to item 11.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Resolution.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd like to talk briefly about items 11, 12, and 13. These ideas came out of a committee that was appointed by the mayor, consisted of Mayor Pro Tem Castillo and Councilman Smith, to work with the businesses in Canyon Lake as it related to COVID-19 and what they were going through and how they were struggling. And the initial purpose was to put together a town hall meeting with our businesses to discuss what steps they could take to be able to open for business again more quickly, and then to take those ideas and advocate for our businesses to the county and to the state. And as that discussion continued, staff was asked by that committee to look at ways that the city could be helpful to our businesses and our residents as we start to recover from COVID-19. So these next three items on your agenda are three different resolutions that are intended to provide COVID-19 recovery assistance. So I'll take them one at a time here, and I'll start with item 11, which is resolution 2020-27, and give a little background here. On March 19th, 2020, Governor Gavin Newsom signed Executive Order N3320, ordering all Californians to stay home and closing all businesses not listed under the federal critical infrastructure sectors. Since that date, a number of businesses in Canyon Lake have been non-operational or operating at a limited capacity. This has caused extraordinary hardship on these businesses, their owners, and employees. In the 76 days since this order was issued, the national unemployment rate has risen to 14.7%, and the state unemployment rate is estimated to be at 25%. City staff has fielded numerous calls from Canyon Lake businesses wondering when they would be allowed to reopen. On Friday, April 17th, 2020, Mayor Aaron Kranz appointed Mayor Pro Tem Casey Castillo and Councilman Jeremy Smith to the Small Business Symposium Ad Hoc Committee. The purpose of Ad Hoc Committee was to explore ways in which the city might be able to advocate for reopening businesses safely. In conjunction with city staff, both committee members participated in discussions with business owners via Zoom and received ideas on how their businesses would be able to open safely. With this information, Mayor Pro Tem Castillo drafted 2 letters to Governor Newsom expressing support for businesses and requesting regional variance in regard to reopening. In addition, the mayor and city manager participated in numerous virtual meetings with mayors and city managers throughout the region, resulting in advocacy efforts at the county and state levels on behalf of local businesses. City staff have also maintained consistent communications with local businesses, providing updated information on rapidly changing regulations, as well as links to resources available to assist businesses and employees. Now that the state has moved forward with reopening many businesses in counties that meet certain criteria, cities and counties are taking various actions to assist their local businesses with navigating the economic turmoil brought by the COVID-19 pandemic and associated state action. While the city has been working diligently to resolve a significant structural deficit in the general fund, and therefore does not have the resources to provide city-sponsored grant funding for local businesses, members of the City Council have expressed a desire to find a way to provide some level of assistance. Adoption of Resolution 2020-29 would authorize the city manager to establish a program to waive business license renewal fees for the 2021 calendar year for brick and mortar businesses located within the city of Canyon Lake that were classified as non-essential under Executive Order N3320 and were therefore required to cease or significantly curtail business operations. The program would result in some reduction of revenue for the city, but that reduction is not expected to exceed $10,000. So with that, staff recommends approval of Resolution 2020-27.
Thank you. Questions?
I just want to say thank you so much to our mayor for allowing this committee to exist, our mayor pro tem, and all the hard work that we've done during COVID-19. And it was pretty awesome to see our business community come together and not only get themselves involved in the issues and struggles that we were facing as business owners during COVID-19, but also come up with a plan and implement their own policies and their own criterias to try to get their businesses open up and be compliant with what we were working with. And I know as a business owner myself, and Jordan and Casey as well, as we all have owned and operated businesses, it's a struggle. And having the committee in place and just having a voice from their local representatives was so important. So I just want to say thank you so much for all the work that has been done in regards to our small businesses. I for one would love to see this resolution passed. I think it shows that the city of Canyon Lake is taking an important role in our small businesses, and small that it is, it's still a role nonetheless. So for me, I know that this is true and dear to my heart, and I just want to say thank you for all the work that the both of you have done on this as well.
Thank you.
I would agree. I do think that the businesses that were classified as non-essential deserve a break.
Well, I can tell you I'm very pleased with what the work that the two of you did. I've heard some very positive comments. It was a great presentation, and I hope that we can continue doing that. So thank you very much for your effort. It is well appreciated. Do we have any public comments on this?
We don't.
Okay. We're going to move on to have a motion to approve resolution.
I'll make the motion that we adopt resolution number 2020-27.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And we require a roll call vote once again.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron
Aye.
Motion carried to approve resolution number 2020-27 with Councilmember Green absent.
Mayor, can I make a comment? Mayor Pro Tem Castillo wrote 2 letters, were incredibly well-written letters, and I think got the attention of the governor, so thank you for your good work.
Appreciate that.
She's very good at that.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, we're going to move on to item 12.
Yes, sir, thank you. So the second item as part of our COVID-19 recovery assistance package here is Resolution 2020-28. On January 15th, 2020, the City Council approved the second reading of ordinance number 192, establishing the single-family residential rental registration, inspection, and crime-free rental housing program, or the residential rental program for short. The program was designed to alleviate common problems experienced with rental properties, to improve living conditions for renters, and to protect the general welfare of Canyon Lake residents. The program requires property owners to register their homes if all or a portion of the residence is being rented or leased to persons other than the property owner. In an effort to encourage early participation in the city's new residential rental program, the city reduced the business license fee by 50% for any registration filed on or before June 30th of this year. On March 19th, 2020, Governor Gavin Newsom signed Executive Order N3320, ordering all Californians to stay home and requiring the closing of all businesses not listed under the federal critical infrastructure sectors. This left many Californians out of work and unable to pay their bills. Although reopening the economy has begun, it will take time for the incomes of many Californians to return to normal. As a result, federal, state, and local government agencies are taking action to provide assistance and relief wherever practical and feasible. Adoption of Resolution 2020-28 would authorize the city manager to establish a program to extend the 50% discount for business license fees required by the residential rental program through the end of the 2020 calendar year for properties located within the city of Canyon Lake that have been adversely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So with that, staff recommends the council adopt Resolution 2020-28.
Thank you. Council, have any questions of staff?
Mr. Mayor, if I may. We received an email from a constituent earlier, a couple weeks ago, in regards to looking for assistance and looking for help due to COVID-19. So I just want to thank staff for taking the approach and doing just that. I'll leave the name out of this particular person, but I think this fits exactly with what you were looking for. You were seeking some help in regards to the crisis of COVID-19 and a little bit of forgiveness. And I think Resolution 12 and 13 as well both answered the questions and concerns that you had. So I just want to thank again staff for listening to the community, listening to the concerns, and we're legitimately creating policy that is coming straight from our residents in Canyon Lake, and I think that is so important.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No.
Any public comments?
No comments.
No comments. Okay, then entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 2020 as 28.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron
Aye.
Motion carried to approve resolution number 2020-28 with Councilmember Green absent.
Thank you. Keeping with the theme, we have item number 13, further resolution.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So part of the residential rental program is a required inspection of rental properties. And while that is typically required and while enforcement department personnel are capable of conducting inspections in a manner that protects the health and safety of residents, the city wishes to be sensitive to those who may be concerned about city staff entering their home during a time of pandemic. So the adoption of this resolution, which is resolution 2020-29, would provide property owners and tenants the ability to request a temporary suspension of their required inspections until at some point after August 1st of this year. So with that, staff recommends adoption of resolution 2020-29.
Thank you. Council have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I know that, COVID-19 has made us think differently on so many different levels, whether it's the way we interact or communicate with people or just the financial impact it's had on it. With this particular program, there's been a lot of conversations that have come up, from different residents, landlords. I know this doesn't pertain specifically to this exact resolution, but Chris, would you mind using this time to describe some of the positive notes that we've had from this program and what it's done? And there's been a lot of communication in the community in regards to Riverside Sheriff's Department's come in a couple times, and I received 3 phone calls before this meeting, not necessarily positive phone calls, but just questioned phone calls about our program and where it's at. And I think this would be a good time to kind of give a status quo of why the program is still doing well, even with COVID-19, or why it's not doing well, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, thank you. This particular program is one that has surprised us, frankly. It has surprised us at how valuable it really has been for us already in a short period of time. We always believed that there was a benefit to this program and that the city could and perhaps should play a role in protecting both landlords and tenants, protecting the housing stock within the community, protecting property values, stopping nuisance activities in the community. And in the short period of time that these inspections have been happening, I think it's shocked some of us on staff, and just some of the things that have been discovered. Just really bad out of code electrical wiring situations. In some cases, just extension cords run up along the wall, and that's the main electricity for that rental space. We've been some high profile cases in the community lately about large marijuana grows in rental properties. Those sort of situations could have been prevented had inspections been required. We have done inspections where city enforcement staff have come across grows that are larger than what are legal. I want to emphasize that the program is not intended to be a gotcha. It's not the city's intent to go out and just catch people doing something wrong and to cite them. That's not it at all. And when our enforcement staff do find things that are not to code or that are dangerous, like the example of bad wiring, property owners are given every opportunity to come into compliance. We're not immediately cited. We're there to be helpful. But when someone becomes a landlord, when they decide to take property that they own and rent it out to another person, that comes with certain responsibilities, ethical responsibilities, but also legal responsibilities. And we as a city have a right to make sure that that rental housing stock is maintained at a certain level. And long term, it just benefits the entire community, and we're already starting to see the benefit of that.
And Mr. City Manager and Mr. City Attorney as well, as sometimes, Canyon Lake is such a unique community that I don't think there's anything else like it. We don't invent the wheel here. This has been done before. This is a program that other cities are utilizing, and we're not just making this up and going with it. So this is a credible program that other cities have done. I'm just thrilled at the fact that we're creating policy and we're listening to the residents. I know for me, I'm trying to be as transparent as possible with some of the issues and concerns that our landlords are feeling in regards to invading the property rights and other conversations that we're having. But I really do believe that this council and the staff continues to not only listen to the concerns and issues, but create policies around what we've already started, such as these two resolutions that impact people in regards to COVID. So I just want to applaud the hard work that's been done and paying attention to it. And thank you for clearing up those points. And it's good to hear the positive and the negative too, so we can fix the issues that we have. But we got to keep moving right forward. And as we create policy, I love the fact that we come back and look at it and try to make it better to fit the status quo. So I just want to say thank you for the hard work on that.
If I could echo a little bit of what Jeremy has just talked about, I've been approached by not the landlord side, but the tenant side, and have had conversations where tenants were relieved that this program was in place because it was going to make their landlords come into compliance and be held accountable. So a lot of the feedback that has been negative, I think, has been from the landlords wanting to protect their tenants from, invasions of privacy in terms of the inspections, but a lot of the feedback I got from tenants was it was welcomed.
I think the negative aspect of this is going to disappear very quickly. People are going to appreciate exactly what it is that we're doing. And it's kind of taking the load off of the tenants to have to turn somebody in for something. This makes us the good and the bad guys at the same time. So I think people will get used to this soon, and I'm sure that it will be very beneficial to the city. And I think the POA will appreciate some of this information that we have as well. So, any other comments? Randy, any comments?
Mayor, I did just want to say, echoing sort of the Mayor Pro Tem's comments about the relief that a lot of tenants have expressed. Every single inspection the city has been done with consent for the people in the houses. Our program is structured that if we do not obtain consent, we have the ability to go and obtain a warrant for an inspection. We haven't had to utilize that because every single one has just been happy that we're there, welcomed us in, and like the city manager said, we're not there as gotcha, we're not there to just cite, we're there to bring the housing stock of the city of Canyon Lake up to the minimum standard that state law requires.
Right? And I understand that to be fire alarms and smoke detectors, I'm sorry, that's what I was saying, smoke detectors and CO2 monitors and that kind of thing that you would just expect would be in a house.
Right, and the kind of thing that any one of us would want to be in functional working order in the place where we and our families live. And so that's what they're there for. That is all that they're there for.
Right.
And like I said, every single one has been a consensual inspection thus far.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, one last comment on this. As we move forward with social media and technology, and maybe Tyler, this is something for you to work on. And I think Gina would be for it too, because like Casey, I've been approached by landlords and tenants, and it's actually been a positive, experience for them. And maybe we can show that via the video, whether it's a step-by-step or, the camera follows Jeannie through a house, if of course the homeowner feels comfortable with it or not. Because I think that the concern that we're getting is it is this controversial situation when it's really not. It's a very simple 5-minute ordeal that is not threatening at all, and it's done purely by the consent of the person who's living in the house. And I think that's what's really important, and Chris, you nailed it, it's not a I gotcha program, it's we're here to help. You know, we're here to see if we can maybe provide you some, you know, new smoke detectors. Here's an application for applying for that, or here's your CO2, this is actually how you work it. Simple things like that, whatever it might be, but it's just to making sure that our residents are safe and also our community is safe as a whole, so.
And kind of echoing that, I think a lot of the confusion is that maybe people think that the term warrant is used in the criminal sense and maybe don't have an understanding of an administrative inspection warrant, and maybe that's kind of where people freak out.
Absolutely, and you know, they are very different animals.
Right.
We are very limited in what we can do under an administrative inspection warrant. We are there for life safety, building code issues. That's it. We're not sending the police into people's homes. We're sending our code enforcement staff. And that is all that they're there for.
Maybe that's a FAQ we need.
We're already drafting it in our heads.
Any public comments?
No comments.
No comments. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2020-29.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. One more roll call.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Aaron
Aye.
Motion carried to approve resolution number 2020-29 with Councilmember Green absent.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 14. This is the easy one, shouldn't take very long.
I say just make a motion.
Terry,
Make a motion.
notice that you stayed awake the entire time.
Phone house.
Well,
So moved.
we're going to have a resolution regarding our city budget.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So item 14 actually consists of two separate resolutions. So the first resolution is 2020-30. That's adoption of the budget and establishing the appropriations limit for next fiscal year. And then in your binders, you have a very bright tab here. If you'll turn to that tab, the next resolution you'll find behind it is 2020-31, which is the salary and wage schedule for employees of the city of Canyon Lake for next fiscal year. We have to adopt this every year as well. So we'll start with the budget and then move on to the salary and wage schedule. Before Terry comes up to go through this in more detail, I just want to say what a pleasure it is to be able to present this budget this year. For a very long time, the city has struggled with budget shortfalls related largely to cost increases with public safety contracts. And it's just a pleasure to work with this council. This council had the backbone and the foresight to be the council that made some hard decisions, implemented some much needed programs that ultimately was able to solve the city's budget crisis. And I'm very happy to say that this budget you'll see tonight is balanced. When we were a year ago today looking at the current year's budget, we were showing not just a little deficit, we were showing a budget deficit of over $800,000. This budget in front of you today shows a surplus of almost $150,000. It's a big turnaround in 1 year. And I want to applaud you for the work you've done this year and for being willing to make those hard decisions. So with that, I'll ask Terry Shea, our Finance Director, to come up and present this year's budget.
Well, I think you might be giving credit where credit is due. You had a lot to do with this as well, so thank you for that. And
I'll second that. Your Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, I just want to know who I upset that I got put 14th on a 14-item agenda. I got it to you early. She asked for it 14 days before posting. I'm like, 14 days. So I worked a weekend, so we're good. So if you open up to page 381, I'm going to go through the staff report real quick. So. There's just a couple changes since the last time you saw it. We added a new position in finance and lowered my contract And so that's one change, and then one other employee got a salary raise.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? So you had to work the weekend.
Yes, sir.
You're number 14 tonight.
I know.
We lowered your wages.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Welcome to Canyon Lake.
And Chris took all the thunder out.
Golf on me next time, okay?
Yeah.
Gary, I'm sorry, I missed the first one. You said, what was it?
Oh, the two changes are, one employee got a salary raise from what we originally did, and then we changed the finance department. We added a full-time city position with benefits and reduced my contract. So
Okay.
In other words, we stole somebody from you. Right?
that's the sad part, guys. You all know what a good person she is.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. But that's 90% of our employees find jobs at cities or their clients, so we're not smart enough to put it on our contract that you have to pay.
Would the city manager please tell us a little bit about this employee that we're going to be so lucky to have?
I would love to. So we are adding a position, in a way. It's someone who's already been working with us, someone who's been working under our contract with Rams. Kayla Lozano, who has been our accountant for, gosh, how long, Terry?
A couple of years.
A couple of years, certainly since I've been here. She does a phenomenal job. She works more hours than she gets paid for, I'm told.
Yes.
Her attitude is phenomenal. She's just always willing to jump in and do whatever needs to be done, even if it has nothing to do with accounting. And she's going to help the city meet some needs. We don't have currently anyone in-house who has expertise in human resources. So she will be taking the lead with human resources and other areas as well, such as risk management, procurement. She's going to really fill some of those needs that the city's had for some time. So we're really happy to have her on board. It creates a little bit of an increase in our budget, but not as much as if it was a completely brand new position that we were not contracting for before. So the Rams contract will come down a little bit, and then Kayla will come on full time. We're all very excited about it, and she's very excited about it too.
Yeah, it's time, because when the former one retired, we were going through some tough budget numbers, and so we were able to lower the finance cost by 50 grand, and that was big back then. So I mean, it's time. Kayla is a good person.
Thank you for training her so well, Terry.
She's good.
You know, Terry, it's, these numbers were posted on social media, and some people had some things to say. Other people said, it's hard to find good people, and sometimes it's worth paying, extra for good people. I want to encourage the citizens of Canyon Lake to come into City Hall when you're allowed to. COVID-19 is behind us, and get to know some of the people that work for this community, because we're so blessed. I mean, we are so blessed by the hard work that our staff puts in and day out. And to hear employees say that this is home, even though they might not live here, is just an incredible feeling. So I really want to, encourage the residents of Canyon Lake that if you have a question or concern or an issue on why we pay our staff what we pay, get to know them. Find out all the hard work that they're doing for this community and all the policies that we're trying to implement to make our home a better place. But thank you for all your letting her go. We appreciate it.
Sure.
It means a lot to us. We know we're going to benefit from it. So
It was time. She deserves it. So.
yeah,
And
she's
then
phenomenal.
She'll have PERS, and if it's still there.
Yeah, that's the next project.
Tackle PERS. Fortunately, we're hit by PERS because of our contract with the other two, so we are affected by PERS. So, all right, so I'll be brief. If you turn to page 381, the staff report. So at the end of this fiscal year, I think we'll be at just under $4 million in fund balance. And then we have projected revenues of $6,474,000, projected expenditures of $6,324,270. So our ending fund balance will be just a little bit below $4,120,000. And like the city manager said, we're projecting about $150,000 surplus for this year. So it is very good. When I was first putting the budget together from the notes from these guys, all I could see was, because I have a formula and it shows this number and it's just going negative, 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 negative. Then I got to the new revenues and I'm like, oh, thank God. So, because it wouldn't have been such a pleasant evening, that's for sure. So if you turn to page 382, I'll go over some of the highlights. Some of the major changes from last year's budget are we increased property taxes by $62,000. It's based on assessed valuation. It went up 2% from last year. Increased the property tax VLF, which is one of our major revenue sources, by $42,000. That's also based on assessed value. And then the fire structure fee, which the city manager talked to you about earlier, that's additionally based on assessed value. So those are all increasing 2%. Then we have the big one, the EMS subscription program revenue of $700,000, the residential rental registration revenue of $100,000. The refuse disposal franchise fee went up $230,000 with what we adopted tonight. Increased $40,000 in the business license fees based on what we've been collecting to date. That may go down a little as you just approved the resolution. Increased the city council's department for $30,000 for a second annual, $30,000 for the Winter Wonderland and $20,000 for the state of the city. We increased the city attorney's department for additional hours as needed. The city manager's department increased to $135,000. A lot of that is the salary increases and then the new management analyst position and benefits. It looks like Tyler needs a haircut. Yes. I broke the law and got a haircut. I said it on live TV, sorry. We increased the city clerk's department for $80,000 for salaries and benefits. With Anna becoming a full-time city clerk, the salary went up. We have election costs of $35,000 and then $14,000 for the copier lease, which used to be in the finance department. We moved here. We increased the finance department. That's the $45,000. That's the net difference between reducing the contract and adding Caleb. Increased the planning department $143,000, which includes $8,000 for increase of $8,000 for the regular planning activity and then $135,000 for the housing element. Now the grants that he talked about earlier, the planning and the SB2, those revenues aren't in here. So once we get those revenues, we'll be a lot better. So decrease in the building and safety department of $28,500, just less than that. I went with Interwest and they said we'll probably be down a little bit this year, but we haven't dropped off yet, so maybe this number may be higher. But we do pay a big chunk of the revenue to the expense. So increase the law enforcement budget by $44,000, but the overall cost of the general fund is about a $56,000 decrease because we're able to transfer $250,000 over to the CalCops fund this year instead of $150,000 which we did in the previous year. We decreased the fire budget.
Terry, why is that?
The CalCops money gets adjusted for inflation every year.
Okay.
And so
we expect that next year too. 250?
Yeah, right. So we used to get a minimum of 100,000.
Right.
So we would budget the 100, but this year we're going to get 155.
Okay.
And probably 170 next year.
Perfect.
And we had some carryover reserves.
Got it.
So
Thank you for that.
Sure. The fire budget decreased by $20,950, which is a good thing, but as the city manager explained, they're going to bill us for 100%. So kind of like the high budget and not bill. What can you do? And emergency preparedness, we increased that by $16,300, $7,100 for expenses that will be reimbursed by a grant, and then additional training of $7,500. The animal control budget, our level of animals, the number stayed the same, but the county's costs went up, so that's why it's a little bit higher. We increased the NPDES budget by $10,000 due to increase the consultants. We're going to charge us a little bit more. The special enforcement budget went up by $51,000. That's the salaries plus moving Gina to a full-time person instead of an hourly. And so the raises were 4% step and a 2.3 cost of living. And then if you turn over to page 383, building and facilities maintenance budget, we increased that by $55,860, which includes a decrease in utilities of $8,000, an increase in the Canyon Lake Merchants Association fee of $7,000. This used to be charged out of the city council department, but we moved it. And in addition, we have some capital improvement costs, $12,000 for furniture and $43,000 for the city hall ADA project. And then the ADA expenditures will be reimbursed by a block grant. The gas tax fund, there's an increase of $224,000 in expenditures for the pedestrian crosswalk enhancement project of $63,000, the sound wall repair project of $100,000, and the striping improvement project of $50,000. And there's a budgeted increase in revenues of about $28,000. For the Measure A Special Revenue Fund, RCTC lowered their initial estimate, and so there's a decrease in revenues of $27,500 and a decrease in $46,500 in debt services. We paid all the debt off. So for about a 3-month period, we were debt free. And then we're budgeting some projects in the Measure A fund. We have improved the catch basins for $50,000 and block wall improvements for $100,000. The AQMD Special Revenue Fund will have about $100,000 in there, but as of right now, we don't have any plans for that. And I'm sure Michael and Tyler will research that and bring something during the year. And the CalCops grant, which we talked about earlier, that's where we get the money from the county. It comes from the state. An increase in expenditures of $110,000 this year, and then nothing in the capital projects fund. And then for the first year, we have the new rental fund. We projected the rental income based on the current rates. And so with COVID-19, I'm not sure if they've started negotiating any new rental changes. There's some money budgeted to make the necessary repairs, and those will be general fund loans. So when we get to make those, we'll bring a resolution to you guys to approve budgeted loans. Any questions on the staff report? So now I'll go to this. So I've listed here, which is our general fund revenue detail, and our largest ones are up on top. So we have utility users tax. It's been dropping slowly, but I think with everybody home in this last 2 months, working from home, it may go up. So I'm predicting a slight decrease from $1,012,000 to $1 million. Property taxes, that's about it was a 2% increase. Fire structure fee at 2%. The property tax VLF swap at 2%. And then the franchise fees, that's up quite a bit, and that has a lot to do with the new negotiated CR&R contract. Sales and use tax, surprisingly, we're doing well, sales tax. It's mostly one entity, so we don't have to rely on sales tax, thank God. License and permits, that has some of the newer fees in there, and that's why that's so much higher. Use of money and property, $54,000, and intergovernmental, that's some grants. And then fines and forfeitures, that's held true about the same than other income. So total general fund revenues of $6,474,000, up from $5,186,000 last year. Then you can see what our biggest fees are. The user fees are 19%. Other income, utility users tax 16%, property tax is 15%, fire structure fee 17%, and then the VLF 15%. Franchise tax up to 10% this year, and then you can see how small the sales and use tax is, 5%. So, and then this is the other funds. So we have the gas tax funds. We're predicting $505. Measure A is reduced. The AQMD, we get roughly the same amount each year. The law enforcement grants, that's up from the prior year. And then the rental fund, that includes the general fund loan of $100,000 plus $72,000 in rents. Then we have major revenue sources. This is the change. So we have sales tax, property tax, fire structure fee, and then the percentage change from the prior year. This is the VLF, the franchise fees, and the utility users. You can see that large increase in the franchise fees. That's the thing. And utility users tax is steadily been dropping. So I think a lot of people are getting solar, and that's lowering the cost. And then this is the general fund expenditures by department. You can see in the general government section, we have city council, city attorney, city manager, city clerk, finance, and then building facilities maintenance. So we're going from $974 to $1,337,000, and then in the developmental services we have planning, building and safety, public works, and PDS, and code enforcement, which now is there. Okay, that's ordinance. Can we put code in the budget before the ordinance is done? Okay. So that went from $674 to $826, and then the public safety includes the law enforcement and fire, emergency preparedness plus the animal control, and those are down a little, which is good news. For a total of $6,324,000, and you can see just below there what the city manager was talking about earlier. 65.78% of our budget is public safety. It's a large number. And this is the graph. You can really see it in this picture. So, this is comparisons to the prior year. You can see with the exception of planning, city clerk, there were some major changes in restructuring finance, some major restructuring. In the city council, we added quite a bit. But the planning one is the one that's kind of high. And then emergency preparedness, that's, we're going to get most of that back with grants. So, but if you look at the bottom, just a total 8.1% increase from the previous year. And this is the other funds, Measure A, AQB, gas tax, and then law enforcement grants. And then this is what I talked about fund balance earlier. So we're going to start at the general fund at $3,970,000 and end at $4,119,000. All the special revenue funds, the gas tax, Measure A, AQB trust, those are all fairly healthy funds. The law, AQB, $125,000 to spend. So if we need new vehicles and stuff for the BLM plan. The enterprise fund, that's the new rental, and then the capital project funds. There's no planned expenditures this year yet.
Jerry, could you go back if you don't mind, a couple
Sure.
slides? Let me see. Go back one more. The increase for city council, 86.27% increase.
Yeah.
What's that for?
The majority of that is the $30,000 for the Winter Wonderland and $20,000 for the state and the city.
So we're categorizing it under city council?
Yeah. I mean, we could set up a separate department, maybe next year reorganize all the departments.
Can we do that if you don't mind? Because I don't know about my colleagues, but I didn't receive an 86% increase, so. Unless I just completely missed the boat on this one.
Where were you in that vote?
I don't know where I was at. I haven't missed the meeting yet, so.
It just seems like a lot because it's 86%.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot, and I'm not, I think the offense for, and everyone in the community, I mean, it was unbelievable. But maybe we can, for the budget's sake, people can say, hey, look, oh yeah, that was for that, categorize it, put it in a different bracket.
We could talk with the city manager, move stuff around.
Yeah, maybe put it underneath the city manager's budget.
He had me move half the stuff out.
That's what I thought.
There goes our transparency.
Public safety cost is the change from the years, and the city manager talked about it earlier. You can see in the fire, we went up 32, 30, and 52% in the 3 years. So it just kind of hits home with the percentage changes. So.
Actually, I want to say this for the record because I think the Mayor Pro Tem and I had this conversation because we sat on the Budget and Finance Committee. I think we actually had a decrease in the projected years before from this council, from the last couple council when it came to actually our bottom lines. And that's because of the program that the city manager put in place for our auto allowance as opposed to reimbursement on phone and internet. So
Made life a lot easier.
Yeah.
That's why Kayla decided.
So we should be winning in that graph, not losing.
We're actually budget council members.
Yeah, we're actually budget.
The first year that I was projecting $1 million deficit through the recession. We had a 2-hour budget hearing. Council spent 90 minutes arguing over whether they should get $100 a month or $200 a month or $300 a month. And that was the whole discussion. That's it. Any questions?
We've come a long ways.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say I'm really excited about this budget. Earlier in our Budget and Finance Committee meeting, we asked Terry when was the last time that we had a surplus, and I think he said 2008
No,
or something like that.
We had a surplus. We had a surplus 16, 17, and 17, 18. No, 15, 16, and 15, 16, and 16, 17.
So that was during the time when the fire station was closed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll do it.
And the recession was winding down, and we were getting higher property values. And so And then the last two budgets for this, we had massive $800,000 deficits.
It's pretty amazing that we were able to accomplish this with really no sales tax and COVID-19.
Yep.
That's great.
The city staff, Mike and city manager and Anna and everybody did really a phenomenal job working through that. I mean, they literally went through every line item, so.
I believe it. You guys work hard.
And Anna wanted to give it to me over the phone so I could write it down. I'm like, no. You write it down. And I took my highlighter, and when I got something in the budget, I highlighted to make sure I got everything in there. She did question to make sure I got it.
Good job, team.
Terry, before you go away, did you want to touch on
Oh, the salary thing.
Yeah, resolution 2020-31.
Sure. And so every year we update the salary schedule. And so we added the management analyst position during the current year, but this is the first year you'll see it on the budget. We actually have a full-time city clerk now, so we have that salary here. And then we added the city accountant, human resource specialist, that'll be Kayla's title. And so these, code enforcement supervisor, the city accountant, human resources, and the management analyst, these are new positions with new steps. And these steps there's 4 steps at 4%, and they grow, so they can get up to a 16% increase. And so then we updated this, the bottom schedule, and we updated that for inflation. And so we took the steps that we had last year and hit them by the inflation, which was 2.3% from March to March. So it's a little bit different this year with the newer positions up on top. So any questions on the salaries?
Yeah, I just had one question. Looking at the table of contents for most businesses, most inflation, even other cities that you work with, Terry, what's the average that you're looking at for the salary and wage tables increased by a percentage per year?
They run from 3 to 5% with the steps.
Right.
And most of them will give, if they don't do, some cities won't give an automatic step increase. You have to earn it.
Right.
But most of them will adjust if they're not collectively bargained, like with a 3-year deal, right? So it'll be like a 3-year, these are the steps in the range for 3 years. But most of them will adjust their steps for the inflation, and they'll usually go like a March to March because it's a little easier to budget for, as opposed to like if you go June to June, then we'd have to budget a little higher.
Right.
Do it, so.
And in my research, when I received this number, 2.3%, and I looked into a few cities, the average was anywhere between 3 and 6%, depending on the city, of course, and the budget. But I just want to say kudos again for our team. I mean, not only are below that average, but also we're adding positions and we're trying to grow and we're implementing programs. And, people say, well, if you didn't add all these, increases on salaries, you'd be even more so in a surplus. I disagree. We wouldn't have the surplus if it wasn't for the people in place.
You saw we could lower the other departments a lot and it doesn't help, right?
No.
Because if you lower something by 50%, that's already lower.
Yep. So good work, everyone.
I have a comment on that. Just as a private employer, you have to grow good people and keep good people, and I think our city has done that. And it would be a real shame if we didn't pay them what they were worth.
I agree. And we gave an average of.
I first that, second that, and third that.
Any questions other than that on the schedules?
Good job, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
We know you're on the golf.
I'll play.
I know you will.
Council have any questions for the staff? Any further questions, I should say?
No.
Any public comments on this item?
No public comments.
Good. Thank you.
What?
Well, then I need a motion and a second to approve
I'll make that motion.
both of these resolutions.
That we approve business item number 14, the city budget, both. Can we take them up as one?
Yes.
We can do that? Yep. Adoption resolution number 220-30 and 2020-31. Move that we move forward with both of them.
I second. We have a motion and a second. And now we're ready for our last roll call vote.
Councilmember Bonner.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Castillo. Aye. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Aaron Kranz.
Aye, aye.
Motion carried to approve resolution number 2020-30 and resolution 2020-31 with Councilmember Green absent.
You're that much closer to being able to do that.
Okay, we're gonna move on to city manager if he has any more comments.
I'll try to keep my comments under an hour. Just a couple of quick updates. So we already talked about ESCI. That study is nearing completion. We look forward to bringing that to the council soon. The Citygate study, which is the feasibility study for a police GPA with surrounding cities, that had been paused because of COVID-19. They are working on establishing the timeline now and getting ready to push forward on that study again. Our new IT consultant, Syntech, is doing a fantastic job. Over the past couple of weeks, they've installed faster and more secure wireless access points. You can see one right up here in the council chambers. There's also one upstairs in the main city hall offices. And starting, Mike, I believe it's tomorrow? Are they starting tomorrow on moving things to the cloud?
Officially, yes.
So we've been talking about this for months. Finally, tomorrow, we'll start moving all of our files from our old physical servers to the cloud. Friday, May 22nd, our military banners were installed. Okay, we had 11 banners total. 8 were installed on Railroad Canyon Road and 3 in the town center. And we're getting this really positive response. A lot of people thrilled to see the mayor out there in their patriotic shirt. We're hopeful that now that people see them out there, that it will generate more interest. The next opportunity will be in September, October, to place an order. We'll get them installed leading up to Veterans Day in November. And lastly, City Hall remains closed due to COVID-19, but we are still fully functional. Staff are reporting to the office every day, as we have been all along. We are working towards a plan for reopening. Mike Borja has put a lot of time and effort into figuring out what we need to have in order to open. We've placed an order for clear dividers and to be placed at the counters and signage on the ground, on the walls, showing people to keep the 6-foot social distancing and to wash hands. We'll be installing hand sanitizing stations throughout our offices. And so those things have been ordered. We're still kind of playing it day by day to see how things go. We're looking at the middle of this month to try to reopen City Hall to the public. I will say though that I think we're being a little bit more cautious than some other cities and entities, even like the POA, because we have such a small staff. If even 1 or 2 of our staff members were to fall ill for an extended period of time, it would really put us in a bad spot. And so I think we need to take a lot of precautions and make sure that we do this the right way and we're keeping everyone protected. In the meantime, we're all still here. City staff can be reached by phone, by email, through the website, and all city services are still being provided. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Bonner, you have a report?
Just quickly, we RCTC meeting in May and have another one in June. A little different this way. Our supervisor, Kit Jeffries, said the supervisors are spreading themselves distant, and so we're going to have half of the RCTC spreading apart, and the other half are going to be on Zoom. It's a way to do it. The roundtable is next Monday, June 8th, and we're going to do it by Zoom one more time. We're going to hopefully get back to in July, get back to get everybody together, and we have a new addition. We're going to have Jeannie Odell is going to represent the chamber and the businesses on the roundtable, effectively next Monday. So she's very excited about that. And Jeremy, I look forward to you having there. And then last, I'd like to thank the staff for the incredible work you've done this last two and a half months. And then you ended up getting the council together in one room today it was nice to see the whole group at one time. And I feel bad about Larry, and he's there for illness for it. But being able to get the whole council together is kind of neat. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Castillo.
I just wanted to say I'm really excited to see our town center businesses reopening. You know, we're not 100% back yet, but got my hair done. That was a good day. It's just nice to see businesses and restaurants open and, you know, life coming back to normal. Speaking of coming back to normal, I'm hoping we can schedule a Veterans Day committee meeting sometime soon. I wanted to give a shout out to the Family Matters Club. They had a really fun fundraiser with flamingos, and I put flamingos on all of you, so that was fun, and Darcy, I got you too. I'm also excited about Family Matters graduation parade. I know that's this coming Saturday, so if you can, look online and see if you can be along the route to cheer on the grads. And then lastly, I just wanted to say, you know, it's really sad in America right now, so just as a reminder to be kind to each other, be a good neighbor, pray for our community and our country and our president, and bless the peacekeepers, both those who are sworn and those who are community members. That's it.
Thank you. I assume Councilman Green is not on the line. Okay. Well, we all wish him our best, of course. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to echo some of the positivity that our Mayor Pro Tem said, that, you know, this country right now is going through some stuff, and you know, we're trying to heal, we're trying to fix ourselves, but I think you said it perfectly. Just be careful what you say, be nice, you know, send a prayer out for those, especially our law enforcement who's out there on the front lines right now. Couple things, the county issued a $45 million approved business release COVID-19 grant. The city shared it, I know I did, Mayor Pro Tem shared it as well. There's a link on our Facebook pages along with the cities to apply for that. I think that's a great program that they've done. Tonight you've seen Canyon Lake have made steps in that same direction to try to help out our businesses here in our community. And I think that is so important as we are on our way to recovery from COVID-19. I get to sit on RTA, and it is a pleasure. Bus riding is very unique right now when you have a COVID-19 issue, and you also are dealing with riots. So you can imagine some of the calls that we've been on in regards to what our bus drivers have to face. And, you know, with the ordinance that was placed this week on a curfew, we had to end rides at 5:30 p.m., which really put a lot of people in a lot of issues for transportation who use it to get to and from work. So you can imagine some of the problems that we dealt with, but our staff did the best they possibly could to try to work through that, to try to communicate to people, to send out announcements, hey, look, your ride might not be available after work. And I got to hand it to the people over at RTA who really put their heads together to do all they could when that ordinance came out. So it was a pleasure to be a part of that and to see the response that has come forth with that. I want to remind everyone to go online if you haven't already. Take care of your census. It's not that big of a deal. We've heard about it multiple times. It's a really easy thing to do. Make sure you do that. And I'll end on just saying that our prayers are with everyone who's impacted not only by the pandemic, but all of our business owners throughout Riverside County who's had to go to Home Depot and Lowe's and spend $500 on wood to block all their windows. They thought they would never have to do that. They never thought that they would, their city would be under attack by people who are coming outside of the community. And my heart truly, and as a business owner, I get emotional thinking about it because this is people's livelihood, and they're having to call their wives and their kids and say, I'm going to be home late because I got to defend our only source of income. And that's what people are going through right now. So my hearts and prayers go out to our business community, our law enforcement, and those of you who are also protesting for a good reason. My hearts go to you too because you're doing it for the right reasons. But those of you who are not, that's where I have a problem. So with that, I'll end.
Thank you. Well, it's my turn, and I guess you probably noticed that we are social distancing. but we're not wearing our masks. And this really validates what they say about politicians. The hot air that comes out behind these masks makes it very difficult for us to speak, so I've had to take mine off for this occasion. I'm not going to go into any of the reports of all the Zoom meetings that we've had, but I would just like to talk a little bit, if I may. You know, our country is really hurting now, and we're deeply disturbed by the senseless killing of George Floyd, and we can understand and support the message from peaceful assemblies across the county. But this weekend we saw people who took advantage of lawful protests just to initiate terrible senseless violence and destruction, and this was nationwide. We can't adequately express our condolences for all the pain and loss so many are experiencing. We believe in the right of peaceful assembly, and we recognize that many important advances in our country have been made over the years through lawful protest. Amongst the sadness and anger and violence, I've also seen the good community members. I've also seen the good community members trying to clean up the destruction, gather donations, offer places of refuge, officers trying to bridge the gap between them and their communities, government officials working with community leaders to come up with solutions. We have faith in the county. We know that they will soon be on hand at these events to protect our citizens' First Amendment rights and to ensure our residents can safely assemble, speak out, and grieve together. We're grateful for the sacrifice and efforts of all those who work to pursue justice, equality, and opportunity for all Americans, and thank residents who continue to reach out, speak up, and take part in worthy causes. I pray for unity amongst our communities and those affected by this tragedy. As emotional and at times disturbing as this weekend's event have been, I choose to see this opportunity for us to come together to truly address the systemic racism that has disadvantaged a specific segment of our American family. I do not condone the violence and the looting that has hurt many of our businesses, especially our small businesses that already have been crippled by COVID-19. But the outcry we hear is not just outrage over the killing of Mr. George Floyd. It's about Ahmaud Arbery, Eric Garner, Breonna Taylor, Botham Jean, and too many other African American men and women and children who have died violently and unnecessarily as a result of an economic structure that once saw African Americans as property and has yet to fully see them in equal, humane light. Put this together and then crossed out some different things, so I may have a little trouble keeping up with what I was thinking. I'm heartbroken for our nation. I ache for my friends, neighbors, and families who have been touched by racism, hatred, ignorance. I ache for those law enforcement officers who genuinely have their hearts of service and are trying to protect our community from looters. I ache for the centuries and decades of oppression, mistrust, and miscommunication that have led us to this point. I hope that out of the ashes of this anger, we are able to engage in more honest conversations, to truly listen, and to find actions we can take together that allow everyone to both feel free and equal before the law and in the eyes of each other. I'm disheartened by the violence unfolding in cities across our nation that is not reflective of the purpose and reason that many protesters have assembled in unity that voiced their concerns and unrest. The criminal element of looting and violence is not welcome. It causes everyone to suffer and brings nothing good for our communities and families. I stand with our community and faith-based leaders in a call for unity as we hear the cries of many and stand together against the violence. I encourage residents of our county to exercise their freedom of speech and the right to assemble peacefully. However, looters and rioters who use these protests as a distraction while they destroy our local businesses, many of which are owned by immigrants and people of color, they will be arrested and prosecuted. I support bringing attention to the unnecessary death of George Floyd, but not at the expense of hardworking small business owners. Thank you. The rest of our business is there seems to be some consideration about changing the next city council meeting from July the 1st to the following Wednesday. Is that acceptable?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there was a discussion earlier about possibly moving the July meeting to Wednesday, July 8th.
Is that acceptable with the council?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so moved. We are now going to adjourn this meeting at 9:29.